What's up guys, this is your favorite fanfic YouTuber, the Fanfic Majesty. Join my Discord if you want to chat and share your thoughts, the link is in the description. 7MB Chapter 191 Split up. The Empress quickly calmed down her demeanor and became more stern. This was her husband's younger brother, so she couldn't let her brother-in-law fall in love with her, otherwise her husband would definitely be unhappy. But it can't be too cold, otherwise my brother-in-law will think that I don't welcome him. Alas, you are beautiful, but you have to think about more things. So after seeing Luffy getting closer and closer, the Empress just lowered her head, not looking into Luffy's eyes, and tried hard to grasp the balance between them. Luffy in the distance moved very fast. In a few breaths, he flew to the edge of the island, turning a blind eye to the Empress known as the most beautiful woman in the world. He was filled with excitement after seeing Cheng Cheng, and happily waved hello to Cheng Cheng. Hey, brother Cheng Cheng, what a coincidence, you are here too. Cheng Cheng was a little helpless. He had previously told Big Bear to slow down Luffy as much as possible when filming him, so that Luffy could fly in the sky for a few more days. At present, it seemed that the time was just right. After patting Luffy's head lightly, Cheng Cheng said angrily, "What a coincidence, I've been waiting for you here all morning. It seems that Tyrant Bear is letting you fly too slowly." Luffy still didn't notice the magnificent Empress beside him. Thinking of the Big Bear, he couldn't help but get angry. He clenched his fists and said angrily. That Shichibukai Big Bear was so abominable, it even scattered Zoro and the others one by one. At first, I became Zoro and they were beaten to death by the Big Bear. Now it seems that they should be beaten to all parts of the world like me, bar. Cheng Cheng explained. Don't hold grudges against Big Bear. It was my idea to break up all of you. I have arranged suitable training places for Zoro, Nami, and Usopp. I will wait for a year or two before you become stronger. It's not too late to continue taking risks. Luffy scratched his head, not quite understanding, but still said with a smile. So that's it. Since it was arranged by you, brother, I can rest assured. Our current strength does seem to be too weak. Cheng Cheng stood up and took the Empress's hand and introduced him to Luffy. She will be your sister-in-law from now on. She is one of the Empresses of Shichibukai. There are many beauties on Daughter Island. When you become One Piece, if you still can't find a wife, let your sister-in-law introduce a few to you. Luffy's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked directly at the Empress, and looked around the Empress. Wow, that's awesome, Shichibukai is a big pirate. The Empress felt unnatural for the first time. She always felt that she was unfaithful to her husband. If he hadn't been Cheng Cheng's younger brother, he would have turned into stone by now. Cheng Cheng smiled and reminded the Empress, don't worry, Luffy has a pure heart. He won't like women for the time being. You don't have to be restrained. Just do whatever you want. The Empress looked at Cheng Cheng with doubtful eyes, full of disbelief. She was extremely confident in her charm and absolutely did not believe that there was any man in the world who was not attracted to him except Cheng Cheng. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng's expression was playful. You'll know after you try it. When Hancock turned his eyes to Luffy this time, he instantly regained his fierce aura of dominating the world. It seemed that all men in the world should surrender under her pomegranate skirt, and in order to prove her thoughts to Cheng Cheng, her aura became even more alluring. Luffy looked at the Empress with curiosity and said, do you have any meat? Sister-in-law, I'm a little hungry after flying for 2 days and 2 nights. The Empress put her hands on her chest and released the sweet wind without hesitation. Anyone attracted by her beauty would be petrified. However, as bursts of love rays passed through Luffy's body, Luffy was safe and sound and did not turn into stone. Luffy thought this was the Empress's special way of saying hello, bared his teeth and gave a bright smile, and made a love gesture to the Empress. The Empress instantly became disappointed. She walked slowly to the beach and looked at the reflection in the water, somewhat doubting her own charm. Cheng Cheng said with a smile, I told you that Luffy has a pure heart and you still don't believe it. Now you've been hit. Luffy is the One Piece of the future. He doesn't like women, right Luffy? Luffy bared his teeth and grinned. One Piece is a must. As for women, I should still like them. You don't like her, you don't even feel it when you see the Empress, who is recognized as the most beautiful woman in the world. If you really like her, Nami and Robin should have chosen one long ago. Of course, in Cheng Cheng's opinion, Nami is more suitable for Luffy. Cheng Cheng Chunin couldn't help but sigh, put his arm around Luffy's shoulders and said, never mind that for now, I know you must be hungry. Let's go back and have something to eat. Once you're full, we'll set off. Luffy's eyes suddenly shone, and he was even more excited than when he saw the Empress. He jumped up and shouted, eat meat, ha ha ha, I'm starving to death. After the 3 of them arrived at the palace, the Empress immediately asked people to serve various kinds of meat that had been prepared in advance, and set up hundreds of banquet tables in the palace, accompanied by other elites of the 9 Snakes pirates, and everyone was happy. Luffy, who let go of his belly and ate meat like crazy, soon turned into a big rubber ball, which was rolled around on the ground like a ball by the women in cool clothes. Luffy was laughing and playing with everyone while eating the meat, very happy. After Luffy had eaten and drank enough, he suddenly remembered that he still had things to do after eating, and asked Cheng Cheng at the top of his voice. Advertisement, brother Cheng Cheng, are there any other entertainment activities in the evening? Do you want to continue holding the bonfire banquet? Ha 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 ha. Cheng Cheng sat on the main seat with the Empress. Cheng Cheng took a sip of wine, hesitated for a while, and then said, let's go to Impel Down to rescue Ace. He will be executed in Marine Fando Square at the Marine headquarters in 6 days. Luffy, who was rolling on the ground, suddenly stopped, his eyes widened, and he asked in disbelief. Ace is going to be executed. How could that happen? Ace is very powerful. Cheng Cheng casually tossed a latest newspaper towards Luffy. It contains the basic story of Ace's capture. Although it is slightly different from the facts, that's basically it. The other women saw that Luffy looked a little unnatural and did not dare to continue playing around. They all looked at Luffy worriedly and wanted to go up and comfort him. After Luffy took the newspaper, he quickly found Ace's portrait in the most conspicuous position. Luffy's hands were trembling as he read the contents of the newspaper. Although he didn't recognize some of the words, he still burst into tears and had runny nose. He looked at Cheng Cheng with tears in his eyes. "Brother Cheng Cheng, let's go now. I won't eat. Let's go rescue Ace now." Cheng Cheng stretched and stood up and said, "Okay, in that case, let's set off. You and your sister-in-law will go to the Black Justice to meet them first, and then attack the Impel Down City together." Luffy asked in confusion, "Brother, what about you?" Cheng Cheng smiled mysteriously, patted Luffy's straw hat and said, "When the time comes, I'll attack from inside Impel Down City. We brothers will work together from inside and outside to turn him upside down." The somersault cloud quickly flew over from the sky, followed by the white cloud Zeus wearing a hat. As soon as Zeus saw Cheng Cheng, he hugged Cheng Cheng's thigh and said, "Brother Cheng Cheng, Sister Nami is lost. I can't find her." Cheng Cheng bent down and whispered a location to Zeus, then straightened up and said, "You can go find her again after the Impel City matter is over. Nami is safe now, so don't worry." Zeus nodded heavily, then supported Luffy, while Somersault Cloud dragged the Empress, and the two of them flew into the distant night sky together. Cheng Cheng was alone and stepped on the moonwalk to the sky above the battleship where Vice Admiral Mole was. His eyes were cold and his hands were clasped together at his waist. A ball of energy appeared in an instant, and the fluctuations flashed with powerful destructive power. 10 minutes later, a huge beam of energy fell from the sky, swallowing up Lieutenant General Mole and the Sea Tower stone battleship that had cost a lot of money to build. The waves rolled and splashed hundreds of meters high. Chapter 192. A sword opens the way after an hour. The sea was calm, there were no rolling waves, and there was no trace of the presence of a marine warship here. The entire battleship was wiped out by the super turtle-style qigong that Cheng Cheng had accumulated for 10 minutes, leaving no residue behind. Cheng Cheng stared blankly at the sea for a while, and then took a long breath. Only then did he feel that the anger in his heart had dissipated a lot, and the uncontrollable anger had calmed down a bit. Even under pressure from the Black Justice pirates, Whitebeard pirates, Red Hair pirates, and the Revolutionary Army, the world government was still unwilling to let Ace go. It seems that there is no hope of rescuing Ace without fighting, but where does the Marine headquarters rely on? Why are they fighting this war? Are the newly appointed Marine Generals Momosagi, Gion and Ogaju more powerful than Akainu and Aokiji? Or does Marine headquarters have some secret weapon hidden here? Or are the 5 old guys from 5 elders also ready to take action? Otherwise, where does their confidence come from? Cheng Cheng, who couldn't figure out these messy things, simply stopped thinking about it. He stood on the top of a mountain and said to himself, "System, proceed to the next task." "Yes sir, we are locating the destination and starting the teleportation. Close black lens bracket." Then there was a flash of golden light, and Cheng Cheng's figure disappeared instantly. After opening his eyes again, Cheng Cheng saw the darkness around him, all of which were cells made of solid large rocks. The air exuded a cold, damp and unpleasant smell, and from time to time there was a scream like a slaughtered pig. Unexpectedly, the system was quite reliable this time. Instead of teleporting me to the sky above Impel Down City, I was teleported directly to the prison. Looking at the dark and humid environment around him, Cheng Cheng sighed. The people imprisoned here would never want to leave. Although the most ferocious pirates are imprisoned here, there are also hierarchies among them. Advertisement: this level is the underground level, also called Crimson Hell. The crimes of the prisoners imprisoned in this level are not that serious, and they are considered the lowest level of pirates according to the division of power. Cheng Cheng walked forward slowly. The bottom of the prison was intricate and complicated, like a maze. Even if the criminal wanted to escape, it would be difficult to find the way out. Cheng Cheng, who was walking calmly in the prison, was soon spotted by other prisoners in the prison, who shouted at Cheng Cheng. "White-haired boy, how did you get out? You don't look like a jailer in what you're wearing. Do you have a way to escape?" Cheng Cheng smiled and said, "I came in from outside. What? Do you want to go out?" The tortured criminals who were like ghosts immediately became excited, holding the railings of the prison with both hands, and said one after another, "Of course I do. If we can go out, brother, you are our reborn parents. I will follow you to death in the future." "Yes, little brother, the key is in the guard room. Go and steal it for us. After you steal it, you will be our biological father." Cheng Cheng sneered. Even if they didn't need to beg, Cheng Cheng would let them out. The purpose of his coming this time was to turn the entire Impel City upside down. The more chaotic the better. After slowly pulling out the Genhai sword from behind, Cheng Cheng held the sword with one hand, looked at the prisoners inside and said, "I'm just letting you out, there's no need to find any keys." After saying that, Cheng Cheng waved his arm and slashed across with his sword. The indestructible sea tower stone lock in the cell was broken with a sound. The prisoners in the prison were instantly excited. All the prisoners in the prison opposite and next to them were shouting loudly, asking for help from Cheng Cheng to save them. At this time, 3 blue orangutans holding giant axes walked over from the other side of the road. The criminals fell silent instantly. Even the people in the cell whose chains were cut off by Cheng Cheng showed no intention of escaping. One of them hurriedly said, "Benefactor, come in quickly. The blue gorilla is here. Don't let them discover it. They are the guards of this level and are very strong. After they leave, it will not be too late for us to escape. Cheng Cheng smiled and shook his head gently. It's okay, the whole prison will be more chaotic in a while, you can wait until the time is right and then escape together. At this time, the 3 blue orangutans on the opposite side had already noticed Cheng Cheng. Seeing that his clothes did not look like a prisoner, and he was not a jailer here, they did not talk nonsense. After looking at each other, they simultaneously raised their giant axes and headed towards Cheng Cheng rushed over. The corners of Cheng Cheng's lips curled up, and the wrist holding the Zhenhai sword shook slightly. His figure moved rapidly like a bolt of lightning, shuttling through the dark corridors. Advertisement. After a series of sword lights, Cheng Cheng had appeared on the other side of the prison. The giant axes in the hands of the 3 blue orangutans shattered, and they fell to the ground without any resistance. At the same time, the stone locks of the cells on both sides of the prison corridor were all broken into pieces. In an instant, the entire prison emitted a loud roar of excitement, and all the criminals in the prison rushed out, having long forgotten what Cheng Cheng had just told them. Drop. 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 Shrill sirens sounded all around the prison. The commotion caused by Cheng Cheng's actions had long been seen by the guards in the monitoring room, and they sounded the sirens without hesitation. Cheng Cheng didn't care about this. Anyway, the more chaos, the better. As for who can survive this battle royale in the end, it depends on their respective lives. Cheng Cheng's figure disappeared in a flash, running quickly through the maze-like prison. As soon as his eyes were focused, Serre's domineering energy was instantly activated, and a layer of invisible energy fluctuations enveloped the entire Impel City. Cheng Cheng's mind soon appeared in the 3-dimensional projection map of Impel City, and he could clearly see the flashing red on the map. Point. The closer to the bottom, the brighter the red dot shines. With this 3-dimensional projection map in his mind, Cheng Cheng quickly found the way to the second level of Beast Hell. Cheng Cheng no longer hesitated and ran forward quickly. When he reached a cliff, Cheng Cheng stopped and looked ahead. Under the cliff, there is a blood-red forest. The trees and grass are all made of sharp knives. Dozens of prisoners are walking barefoot in the grass formed by sharp blades. Every step they take makes a miserable scream. The prisoners on the first level of Crimson Hell will walk through the blood-red forest from beginning to end every once in a while to accept the punishment of hell. Some prisoners couldn't hold on even once and died inside. Those who were lucky enough to survive were tortured so much that they didn't have the strength to escape. Cheng Cheng sighed. Crimson Hell, this is probably the real hell, right? But who can guarantee that the people here are all vicious pirates, and not people who were caught after offending Tianlong? Cheng Cheng, who was expressionless, stepped on the moonwalk and flew directly over the cliff, reaching the opposite side in the blink of an eye. He turned his head to look at the people below, feeling a little unbearable. He turned around and slashed out a blue sword energy, tearing the air. The blood-red forest composed of sword blades below was split into a flat avenue in an instant. Chapter 193 Sphinx. The ground that was originally covered with stabs and sharp blades was cut into a deep ravine by Cheng Cheng's sword, and all the sharp blades in the ravine disappeared. A special path emerged. Although it is far from a flat road, it is already a paradise for those criminals who are trapped in sword trees and needle grass. For a while, all the criminals in prison uniforms walked towards the ravine in unison. As long as they walked along this road to the other side, they could complete the punishment of Crimson Hell alive. After striking out with the sword, Cheng Cheng felt a little more comfortable. Since arriving in Impel Down City, Cheng Cheng has breathed in the dark and humid air here and felt that his body has been contaminated with filth. Although this thing will not affect his current physical condition, it will make his mood more and more gloomy. If an ordinary person stays here for a long time, he will either become mentally ill or crazy. In the middle of the blood-red forest, there is a huge circular black hole that is bottomless. All the prisoners here know that this black hole can escape from Crimson Hell, but no one does it. Because under Crimson Hell, there is a Warcraft Hell that is even more terrifying for them. The second level is filled with all kinds of powerful Warcraft. Even if criminals have the key, few dare to escape. The strong cage is sometimes a strong layer of protection for them. For example, the criminals who were punished in the first level of Crimson Hell would be thrown directly into this black hole by the jailer when they were tortured to death, to serve as rations for the monsters below. What kind of monster is here? Is it stronger than Poseidon? A sneer appeared at the corner of Cheng Cheng's mouth. The fear of these monsters was only to those criminals. How could those big pirates who were imprisoned on the 5th and 6th floors take these so-called monsters to heart? Cheng Cheng jumped up and fell into the black hole. The criminals around who were covered in blood and still struggling were still immersed in the miraculous sword. At this moment, they saw Cheng Cheng jumping into the black hole without thinking, and they all knelt down in the direction of Cheng Cheng. During the descent, the cave was pitch black and you couldn't see your fingers. It wasn't until after descending for a while that Cheng Cheng saw a faint light below. The tip of his toes landed lightly. Before he had time to observe his surroundings, several roars suddenly came to his ears, and the ground shook slightly as 3 seahorses rushed towards Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng immediately laughed. These 3 hippo beasts were short in stature, like piglets that were only a few months old. They all opened their mouths wide and wanted to eat Cheng Cheng. Obviously, these 3 hippopotamus beasts usually sit here and wait, but Cheng Cheng just thinks they are a little cute no matter how he looks at them. Are they really the legendary hell monsters? Advertisement. Bang. 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 The 3 cute-looking hippo beasts were very fast and bumped directly into Cheng Cheng. He looked surprised. He didn't expect these little guys to be quite strong. Since you are so cute, you must be cute when you fly, right? Cheng Cheng chuckled, raised his legs like lightning, and the 3 hippo beasts flew out like footballs, then hit the wall and bounced back and forth a few times. One of the hippo beasts was so precise that its neck got stuck on the prison fence and was stuck in the air unable to move. The criminals in the prison swarmed up in an instant, punching and kicking the hippo beast. Cheng Cheng praised with satisfaction. Well, my feet feel good. Next, Cheng Cheng walked to the prison as usual and opened all the cell locks. Although the criminals were happy, no one dared to come out. Because the monsters outside the prison are too scary for them, the prison is protecting them at this moment. They are naturally not afraid of the hippopotamus beasts, mainly because there are a few powerful monsters. If you are not careful, you will be swallowed by them without any chance to resist. Cheng Cheng smiled bitterly and shook his head. He didn't expect it would be so troublesome. Fortunately, the Sphinx, the strongest monster in Warcraft Hell, did not keep him waiting for too long. This huge white-haired lion Sphinx came slowly, causing the ground to shake with every step it took. The criminals in the prison were all frightened and quickly retreated to the corner. Inside the prison, a tall, thick-set, bald man with a sinewy face quickly opened the iron door and said to Cheng Cheng in a hurry. You come in first, hurry up, or you will be eaten by the Sphinx. This guy is the boss of this Warcraft Hell. However, before Cheng Cheng could respond, other criminals inside immediately pulled the bald man back, closed the iron door again, pointed at his nose and cursed. If you want to die, don't take us with you. Lousy still wants to live for a few more years. Once the Sphinx is provoked, no one in our prison can escape. Yeah, you be asterisk 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 D. Do you want to kill us? You are obviously being imprisoned in the Warcraft Hell, and you still want to be a good person? It's really ridiculous. At this moment, the Sphinx at the end of the corridor was getting closer and closer to Cheng Cheng, but Cheng Cheng still had no intention of running away. Advertisement: the bald man was pinned to the ground by 7 or 8 strong men. He could not move and could only say, "This little brother just wanted to rescue us, have you forgotten?" A man with a sharp mouth and monkey cheeks said angrily, "Are you going to save us or let us die? The Sphinx is outside, who dares to go out?" At this time, the Sphinx had arrived 5 meters in front of Cheng Cheng. The King of Warcraft, who was more than 10 meters tall, raised his extremely sharp claws and slapped the motionless Cheng Cheng fiercely. The bald man didn't have time to continue talking nonsense with them, and yelled at Cheng Cheng, "Brother, run away." But instead of running away, Cheng Cheng looked at the bald man and smiled slightly. The Zhenhai sword suddenly came out of its sheath, and the blue sword light flashed on the sword body. He casually waved a crescent sword energy, and the Sphinx's sharp claws exploded, and a cloud of blood mist exploded in the air. The tall and powerful Sphinx opened its mouth wide and screamed, and instinctively struck Cheng Cheng with its other paw. Cheng Cheng snorted coldly, held the Zhenhai sword upside down and leaned forward, his body flashing like a gust of wind passing under the Sphinx's body. In an instant, blood burst out from the Sphinx's abdomen, and the cold and wet stone floor was instantly dyed red, and blood flowed into a river. Boom! The huge Sphinx fell to the ground with a crash, and its huge head turned back to look at Cheng Cheng unwillingly. After letting out a mournful roar, it lost its life. There was silence. The people in the prison unconsciously let go of the bald man, looking dumbfounded, swallowing and not knowing what to say. The bald man breathed a sigh of relief and sighed, "I didn't expect you to be so powerful." Cheng Cheng took a step forward with a smile. Everyone else in the prison took a step back as if facing a formidable enemy. He didn't even look at the others, he just looked at the bald man and asked, "What's your name?" The bald man rubbed his bald head and said shyly, "My name is Johnson." "Good name." Cheng Cheng sighed in admiration and continued, "If you can escape smoothly, you can come to me and I will give you a great blessing." Bald Johnson scratched the back of his head and immediately agreed with a smile. Hit. Chapter 194 Magellan. All the criminals in the underground second-level Warcraft Hell were quickly released and started fighting with the guards and other Warcraft. For a while, the 2 underground floors were generally the same and turned into a mess. Everywhere was filled with piercing sirens. Cheng Cheng did not stay here any longer and rushed to the Starvation Hell, the 3rd underground floor, as quickly as possible. Starvation Hell basically houses vicious criminals with a bounty of more than 50 million, but the heat coming up from the lower level of the Scorching Hell makes this level extremely hot, as if people were being steamed on a steamer all the time. Coupled with the torture of being deprived of water and hunger strike, the prisoners were left skinny and half dead. Even after Cheng Cheng released them, most of them didn't have the strength to escape. They just lay against the wall, waiting for death to come. This is not a prison, it is clearly a real hell. Cheng Cheng had no intention of staying here for long, as the people on this floor were destined not to cause chaos. After arriving at the 4th level of the Scorching Hell, Cheng Cheng did not immediately deal with the criminals, but went to the office of the Warden Magellan. This talent is Cheng Cheng's biggest threat this time. He is the boss of this Impel City. At the same time, he has strength comparable to that of General Marine, or even better. Since Magellan was a poisonous person who ate the poisonous fruit, even the breath he exhaled was poisonous, and the food around his mouth was also poisonous. So every time, those poisons are too strong and I can't bear it, causing me to have diarrhea almost half the time every day. Cheng Cheng guessed that Magellan hadn't appeared to arrest him yet, so he was probably suffering from diarrhea. But Cheng Cheng didn't care about this. He couldn't wait until this guy had diarrhea before the 2 of them had a fair and just battle. Cheng Cheng closed his eyes, and the domineering aura instantly enveloped the surroundings, and he quickly captured the strongest aura. He carried the Zhenhai sword Shichao and walked forward. Below the passage is a sea of red-hot and bubbling red magma. The temperature of thousands of degrees has made this place a deadly area. Very few people will survive if they fall. Cheng Cheng casually took out the phone and dialed the phone in the center of the deck of the Black Justice. Advertisement. The call was answered quickly, and Cheng Cheng just said 2 words expressionlessly. Do it, in front of Warden Magellan's office. The place has become a mess, and most of the jailers have gone to various places to suppress the rioting jailers. At the same time, a large number of jailers gathered here. The jailer, Lil Sadie, who was wearing a pink tight-fitting leather jacket, was waving the whip back and forth in her hand. She was walking back and forth in front of Magellan, obviously a little anxious. Domino, the other deputy warden with a cold temperament, and Saludes, the prison chief, also looked a little anxious and kept looking into the distance with anxious faces. Deputy Director Hambany, who was dressed like an Egyptian pharaoh, kept complaining about Magellan. It's all because you are shitting now that the prison is in turmoil. Now 30% of the criminals have been released by the captain of the Black Justice Pirates. This is all your fault. Sooner or later, I will take your place and become warden. Magellan, who was sitting on the improved throne toilet and suffering from diarrhea, suddenly felt his stomach churning. He immediately closed the small curtain in front of him and said excitedly, it's coming, this is what it feels like. Puff. A very long fart sound echoed in the air, a magnificent scene that spread thousands of miles. Then, a burst of lavender poisonous gas soon emerged. Everyone around them tacitly took a step back and pinched their noses. Deputy Director Hambany suddenly exclaimed, pointed at the screen on the monitoring monitor, and said hurriedly, somewhat incoherently. Quick, look, what are those people outside? On the monitors around the outside world, there suddenly appeared many monsters like Poseidon, overwhelming them and heading towards Impel Down City at a fast speed. One of them, a huge beast that looked like a gorilla, jumped into the air and slammed its entire hill-like body into the Impel City. Then the monitor went dark, and at the same time they all felt a violent shaking on the 4th floor underground. Domino, the deputy guard wearing sunglasses, immediately exclaimed, the Black Justice Pirates, all of them are here. The others were immediately shocked. Advertisement. In the past few days, no one knew who the Black Justice Pirate Group was. Unexpectedly, not only their captain was here, but was he about to launch a decisive battle against the entire Impel Down City. The Black Justice Pirates claim to have 40 Phantom Beast Devil Fruit users, and the combat capabilities of these people are terrifying. Unless those people imprisoned on the 5th and 6th floors of the underground are released to deal with them, they will definitely not be the opponents of the Black Justice Pirates. Magellan, who was sitting on the throne of the toilet, couldn't care less about shame at this moment. He suddenly opened the small curtain in front of him and immediately gave an order. Domino, contact Marine Headquarters immediately to request support. Hambany, and the rest of you immediately lead everyone to the top to fight the Black Justice Pirates. Deputy Director Hambany immediately refused resolutely. What about you, the warden, why don't you go? In this life and death situation, you are actually shitting. I will report you to the world government and then replace you as the prison warden. Warden. Magellan snorted coldly, and 2 lines of faint purple poisonous gas rushed out from his nostrils. Cheng Cheng, the captain of the Black Justice Pirates, is coming soon. How about you stay here and I go up? Hambany suddenly remembered, immediately shook his head and led everyone to take the elevator and rush to the top floor. Soon, the huge office became empty, and all the jailers from the 1st to the 6th underground floors went to the sea to face the Black Justice Pirates. Magellan, who was just about to stand up, felt his stomach churning again, and quickly sat down again. The poisonous gas boiled away. Boom. Suddenly there was a violent explosion, and a big hole was blown out of the office wall. Cheng Cheng outside the office raised the Zhenhai sword, and the blue sword light surged from the sword, extremely sharp. As expected, he was worthy of being the king of poisons. The smell was really awesome. Cheng Cheng sighed in his heart and quickly put on the mask he had prepared in advance. Only then did he feel better. Cheng Cheng shouted to Magellan, who was even taller than him sitting on the toilet. Master Warden, how long do I have to wait for you? Warden Magellan was wearing a black coat with 2 bat wings flapping behind his back. He glanced at Cheng Cheng with a calm expression. Are you Cheng Cheng, the 5th Emperor with a bounty of 4.6 billion? You look very young indeed. It's a pity that you shouldn't come to me. In this Impel City, I am the boss. Cheng Cheng was too lazy to talk nonsense to this narcissistic guy, so he silently chanted, cut the sea, and struck out with his sword. The thick and sharp blue sword energy tore through the air and made a roar. Magellan looked surprised and stood up immediately, ignoring the turmoil in his stomach. The next moment, the toilet seat was smashed to pieces and exploded, filling the room with fragrance. Chapter 195 Fighting the Poison King. Magellan, the warden who stepped to one side, quickly lifted up his pants, stared angrily at Cheng Cheng and asked, young man, are you polite? Since you are seeking your own death and running into my territory, don't even think about getting out. Cheng Cheng gently patted the Zhenhai sword and sneered, since you are not qualified to say such a thing, how do you think I got my 4.6 billion bounty? Not to mention you, even with the addition of warring states, I can leave and come to Impel Down City whenever I want. The temperature in the searing hell was always very high, and what flowed from Magellan's forehead was not sweat, but drops of extremely corrosive purple venom. When it dripped onto the stone on the ground, the extremely hard stone was instantly corroded, emitting a faint white smoke. Warden Magellan did not have any contempt for the young 5th Emperor, and the information within Marine also gave a very vague introduction to Cheng Cheng. The most commonly used weapon is a broadsword made of seafloor stone. his hands can also emit energy light waves, and he is a user who is suspected of being a space-type devil fruit ability. Magellan knows all this information. After seeing Cheng Cheng, he burst out with a shocking force, which made Magellan confirm that his strength was even more exaggerated than the rumors. Magellan said solemnly, "I know you are here to save Fire Fist Ace, right? But unfortunately, the people at Marine Headquarters have already expected that you will come to the prison to intercept people. Ace was moved a week ago. As for where it was moved, you would never guess." Cheng Cheng smiled sarcastically. How could he not know this information? His fists suddenly clenched, and a shocking force erupted from his body. A golden hurricane enveloped Cheng Cheng's body, and blue lightning flashed as thin as a gossamer. The silver-white hair was blown upside down by the hurricane and turned golden. The big stone on the ground instantly shattered and sank, forming a circular depression. Cheng Cheng's eyes glowed with golden light, and he looked at Magellan coldly and said, "I came today just to trample on the dignity of the world government. I just gave them a warning." Warden Magellan was shocked. He didn't expect that Cheng Cheng's hair just changed color, and his aura suddenly increased several times. Just now, he was wondering in his heart. Although Cheng Cheng in front of him was very strong, he was definitely not strong enough to kill Akainu, so he wondered if he had teamed up with others to kill Akainu. Now it seems that this state is Cheng Cheng's true strength. But the more this happened, the more excited Magellan became. It had been a long time since he had fought heartily. Advertisement: Poison Dragon. Magellan gave a soft drink, and the purple venom behind him kept rolling, and soon formed 3 poisonous dragons with teeth and claws. Purple venom is constantly dripping from the poisonous dragon's body, like a candle melting, and the ground is constantly being eroded by the venom, with little white smoke rising. 3 giant purple dragons with fangs raised their heads to the sky and roared loudly, deafeningly. The 3-headed poisonous dragon hovering and entangled in the air aimed at Cheng Cheng, opened its mouth and dived quickly, crashing towards Cheng Cheng in 3 different directions. Cheng Cheng's eyes suddenly condensed, and every inch of skin on his body was covered with armed domineering aura. The corrosive power of these venoms is so strong that if ordinary skin is contaminated, it will definitely fester and rot. When the 3-headed poisonous dragon moved, he also moved with it. Cheng Cheng turned into a ray of golden light and rushed towards the Warden Magellan. The 3 purple poisonous dragons kept passing by him and hit the stone floor beside him, causing the entire ground to melt and corrode. In the blink of an eye, Cheng Cheng came to a position 5 meters in front of Magellan with his sword. The 3 poisonous dragons suddenly opened their mouths and sprayed out 3 streams of rich purple poisonous gas, covering Magellan in the poisonous gas. Magellan took a deep breath and spit out dozens of bubbles containing tear gas from his mouth, which exploded around him at the same time, creating a continuous cloud of smoke. Cheng Cheng suddenly swung his sword and struck out a golden sword energy. He jumped high into the air and put on the gas mask he had prepared long ago. The golden sword energy split open the poisonous gas and continued to move forward without stopping. Magellan hurriedly turned sideways to avoid the golden sword energy, and the office behind him collapsed, leaving a mess. Warden Magellan was shocked by the power of this casual sword, and snorted coldly. "It seems that you were really prepared. The gas mask has been prepared in advance." Cheng Cheng chuckled and stepped on the moonwalk to look down at Magellan from high in the sky. "Know yourself and your enemy, and you can fight 100 battles without danger. In front of the famous Poison King Magellan, it is necessary to make some extra preparations." After finishing speaking, Cheng Cheng raised the sea-suppressing sword high and silently said, "Cut the sea." The sword was swung out and a huge golden sword energy was shot out. Magellan once again hurriedly avoided this extremely powerful sword energy attack. Boom! Stones flew and a huge crack was cut into the ground, which was shocking. Advertisement Magellan couldn't help but marvel that the power of this sword was so powerful, and the casual sword of Hawkeye was nothing more than that. However, he was amazed and amazed. Magellan was not afraid at all. After adjusting his breathing, he shouted sternly, "Poisonous pufferfish." He suddenly opened his mouth wide and spit out a large number of poisonous balls from his mouth, shooting them at Cheng Cheng very fast like raindrops. Cheng Cheng held the Zhenhai sword tightly with his 5 fingers. The sword light on the sword rose 3 meters in height. He hesitated on the sword body, he waved his wrist quickly. The sword light formed a golden barrier in front of him, and all the poison balls were blocked by the barrier, outside. For a moment, poisonous gas filled the air like rain, but Cheng Cheng was not contaminated at all. Cheng Cheng, whose warm-up activities were finally over, narrowed his eyes, turned into a golden light, and rushed forward quickly. Starburst air current slash. Cheng Cheng flew in front of Magellan in the blink of an eye and took action without hesitation. 1 sword, 2 swords, 3 swords, golden sword energy danced wildly, intertwined into sword nets, and each sword with armed domineering energy really struck Magellan. This time, under Cheng Cheng's personal attack, Magellan finally couldn't dodge. After a rapid succession of 16 sword strikes, Warden Magellan's black coat was filled with bloodstains, one of the bat wings on his back was cut off, and the other remaining wing also had cracks, and he was in a miserable state. Warden Magellan bent over, panting heavily, sweating profusely, and praised, "The 5th Emperor is indeed worthy of his reputation. It seems that Hawkeye's position as the world's greatest swordsman will no longer be maintained." Cheng Cheng smiled in disgust. "Now that you know how powerful I am, why don't you give way? Although you are one of the 5 emperors, you can't look down on others when you speak." Warden Magellan sneered, "My dream when I was young was the same as yours. To be a pirate and travel around the world and visit every corner of the world is not to live up to the great life. But after so many years in Impel Down City, I just want to protect my 3/3 of an acre of land and stay in this dark closed space. If possible, it is best to close my mind as well. But you want to destroy my last comfort, boy, you really deserve to die. Cheng Cheng squinted his eyes and saw a large stream of strange red venom erupting from Magellan's body, covering the sky and soon transforming into a red skull. The Warden Magellan shouted, "The giant soldier of poison, the judgment of hell." Chapter 196 Impossible. The huge red skeleton roared over, and the red venom on its body was different from the purple, and the power was more powerful. Any substance that comes into contact with it will be infected and gradually spread and corrode everything. As long as a person comes into contact with it, the poison will gradually spread throughout the body until death. Even Cheng Cheng, who had already transformed into a Super Saiyan state, did not dare to come into close contact with this extremely powerful poison without an antidote. Cheng Cheng's body quickly retreated, silently reciting, "Breath of water," in his mind. Instantly, a stream of blue water flowed around the sword body. Cheng Cheng suddenly exerted force on his waist and continuously waved several extremely sharp golden sword energy forward. The sword energy wrapped around the blue water stream, tearing the air apart and sending out waves. Sonic boom. The sword energy easily broke through the red poisonous skull and passed through the poisonous skull's body. However, the speed of the red skull's advance continued unabated. After the upper body was split into 3 pieces, the body below the waist was not affected at all. The red skeleton, with only its legs and waist left, jumped up high and smashed towards Cheng Cheng like a mountain. The impact splashed a large amount of red venom on the ground. When Cheng Cheng sensed something was wrong, even though he retreated in advance and blocked most of the venom with his sword, a drop that slipped through the net still splashed onto Cheng Cheng's left arm. Warden Magellan laughed wildly. "No one can resist this move of mine. This red poison is specially prepared by me. Even if you are armed and domineering, it will slowly erode every inch of your body, skin. After you feel the pain completely, you will suffer the most painful torture in the world and die." Cheng Cheng frowned slightly. Warden Magellan was right. When he was avoiding the red skull just now, his arm was only stained with a small drop of red venom. The arm domineering force covering his arm began to emit white smoke and began to spray in all directions. Spread slowly. He is indeed the Poison King. This poison is indeed very powerful. No matter who encounters Magellan, he will probably have a headache. Under normal circumstances, the only way to deal with such a character is to kill him from a distance. Otherwise, once he attacks at close range, the entire surrounding space will become a medium for him to spread poisonous gas. If Cheng Cheng hadn't prepared a gas mask in advance, he might have been paralyzed by inhaling a large amount of poisonous gas and started to hallucinate. Cheng Cheng chuckled, "Your red skull poison is indeed very powerful, but you are not invincible. Otherwise, the 4 emperors like Red Hair and Kaido would have been captured by you long ago." Warden Magellan snorted coldly. "You will know if you are invincible or not. Now look at the poisonous gas on your arm. Has it begun to overflow?" Advertisement. After saying that, the huge red skull stretched out his hands and grabbed Cheng Cheng, trying to hold him in his palm. Cheng Cheng lowered his head and saw that the red poisonous gas on his left arm was about to expand to the entire forearm. If it continued like this, it wouldn't take long before the entire forearm would be useless. However, at this moment, the red skeleton whose upper body had been chopped off by Cheng Cheng had once again condensed into a larger being. It roared upwards and raised its huge fists to hit Cheng Cheng. This time Cheng Cheng did not dare to be careless at all. He was full of domineering attitude and could not let any drop of venom touch his body. The body turned into a golden light and retreated rapidly, while simultaneously waving dozens of golden sword oars wrapped in water. The huge skeleton that was cut into pieces once again turned into venom and scattered on the ground. The hard stone ground was instantly corroded, making bursts of harsh sounds. Magellan asked with a surprised look on his face, "You're a bit weird, kid. The golden sword energy can actually cut off my venom for such a long time. Even Eagle Eye can't do this. But if this is the case, you will be dead today, kid. I will take away your head worth 4.6 billion belly without mercy." The clumps of red venom scattered on the ground began to slowly swell up, transforming into a dozen snarling wolves that flew past from different angles at extremely fast speeds. Cheng Cheng felt dizzy. He didn't expect Magellan, the warden of Impel Down City, to be so difficult to deal with. He held the Zhenhai sword tightly, and his body suddenly rotated 360 degrees. Dozens of golden sword energy radiated out from around him, tearing the ground apart and slashing in all directions. In an instant, a large number of red poisonous wolves were cut into 2 pieces. Among them, a few red poisonous wolves were extremely agile and avoided the dense sword energy, and pounced on them with their mouths wide open. "This ability is so disgusting." Cheng Cheng shouted loudly, activated his water breath with all his strength, and the water on the Zhenhai sword instantly surged. A sword was swung out, and the huge water sword energy once again cut off the 3 poisonous wolves. Suddenly, Cheng Cheng felt a sharp pain in his left arm and saw a poisonous wolf with its tail cut off, biting his left arm at some point. Advertisement. No matter how Cheng Cheng waved his arm, the poisonous wolf would bite him tightly and never let go. At the same time, Magellan sneered, raised his arm, and the whole arm turned into a purple pillar and sprayed out, rushing into the anus of the poisonous wolf at extremely fast speed. After being injected with new energy, the poisonous wolf became more ferocious. Poison passage. Then Magellan got into the poisonous passage that was quickly paved, and almost passed through the poisonous passage to Cheng Cheng's side in the blink of an eye. Magellan emerged from hunger-poisoned wolf's body, opened his mouth wide, and bit Cheng Cheng's left arm instead of the hungry wolf. After the successful blow, before Cheng Cheng could react, he returned to the original place through the poison tunnel again. Ah! Cheng Cheng let out a violent scream and felt his arm gradually become numb. Magellan, who is known as the strongest man in Impel Down City, laughed loudly. You are finished. No one who has been bitten by me personally can survive. You can't survive more than 24 hours. Cheng Cheng looked at the rotten left arm and cursed angrily. You are a real dog. Is this a move that a human can figure out? Magellan chuckled. Whatever you say, you are already a dead man now. Cheng Cheng really put away the Zhenhai sword, reinserted it into the scabbard on his back, looked at Magellan and sneered. It seems that I have to let you see what bullshit poisons you have today. I have the most powerful antidote in the world, medicine. Magellan no longer had the intention to continue fighting with Cheng Cheng, so he found a stone and sat down with a relaxed look on his face, and said sarcastically. Whether it's my purple venom or my red venom, no one can undo it except myself. Cheng Cheng ignored his ignorant and arrogant remarks and just silently took out the small jade bottle, opened the lid and poured all the water of life inside into his left arm. The water of life after dilution has a strong recovery ability, not to mention the water that has not been diluted. Cheng Cheng has enough confidence in the water of life in the Great Holy Grail. After the water of life came into contact with the poisoned and ulcerated skin, it emitted a golden light and swallowed up all the red toxins. The rotten arm quickly recovered as before, and a faint golden light was still exuding from the pores of the skin. Warden Magellan's eyes widened, he took a step back and said in disbelief. Impossible. This is absolutely impossible. Chapter 197. A sword pierces the heart. Cheng Cheng sneered in his heart and was too lazy to waste time with Magellan. He suddenly thought of something important. Below this layer of scorching hell is the freezing hell with extremely low temperatures. The criminals there are big pirates with a bounty of more than 100 million belly. There was no food or drink there, and because of the extremely low temperature, even videophones were not installed. All the criminals ended up freezing to death. Since Zhenhai's sword has little effect on Magellan, then try this method. Cheng Cheng took advantage of the time when Warden Magellan was still in shock, turned into a golden light and flew high into the air, his hands bent together at his waist. In an instant, a terrifyingly powerful energy ball burst out, and he shouted softly, Water-breathing enhanced edition super turtle-style Qigong wave. Boom! The muscles in Cheng Cheng's arms suddenly swelled, and he suddenly pushed forward, bursting out a huge energy beam and crashing into Magellan. The entire air was distorted by this huge blue energy beam. Although Magellan was still in shock, he really couldn't figure out why his own special red venom could be cracked. What kind of medicine was in the bottle in Cheng Cheng's hand? If this matter is not clarified, his poisonous fruit will become a joke. He was even more determined to kill Cheng Cheng. Magellan's expression remained unchanged, and he ducked sideways, and the turtle Qigong wave passed him by. The poison fruit's ability surged, and the red venom on the ground expanded again and again, transforming into a huge skeleton. The difference from before was that this time there were 2 more blood-red knives in the hands of the red skeleton. Magellan sneered. It's useless, you will be consumed by me sooner or later. Do you really think that gas masks are omnipotent? My venom is endless. I want to see how many antidotes you have. Standing proudly in the sky, Cheng Cheng remained silent, twisting his wrists with difficulty. The shockwave in front of him, which was about to hit the wall, made a right-angle turn and shot straight upward. Then the turtle-style Qigong wave drew a beautiful arc in the air and hit the ground from above Magellan's head. Boom! The ground shook, a large crater was instantly blown out, and rocks rolled. Advertisement: the stone bridge not far away broke off in the middle, and countless stones fell into the magma below, causing a burst of magma sparks and bursts of black smoke. Magellan's figure disappeared again. Although he was a little surprised by the power of this turtle Qigong, he still showed disdain. It's useless. No matter how you control it, you still can't hit me. The corners of Cheng Cheng's mouth curled up, and the muscles in his arms suddenly swelled. The black suit on his upper body was instantly torn, revealing high bulges of hard muscles. Blue blood vessels surged violently under the skin, like tiny swimming dragons. Break it for me! Cheng Cheng shouted loudly, and the turtle-style Qigong wave suddenly doubled in thickness, hitting the ground continuously. The hole in the ground became deeper and deeper, and the cracks expanded rapidly like a spider web. The criminals on the entire 4th floor felt strong vibrations. Warden Magellan's expression changed drastically at this moment. He finally understood and shouted angrily. What a lunatic! Stop! If you act like this, the entire Impel Down City will be destroyed by you. The red skeleton immediately brandished his 2 swords and slashed at Cheng Cheng, drawing 2 bloody shadows in the air, trying to interrupt his crazy move. But it's too late. The 5th floor, freezing hell, has a vast space and is filled with silence and solemnity. There weren't that many buildings. As far as the eye could see, there was a glacier with several snow-white military wolves with red eyes tearing apart criminals who had frozen to death. The criminals here are either freezing to death or are freezing to death. Very few people can survive. Most of them are bored and dazed, trembling and hugging each other for warmth. The only fun is guessing who will freeze to death next. Suddenly, everyone felt a strong vibration. The ice above their heads shattered into pieces, and the ice cone fell quickly, hitting the head of the military wolf below. Then the entire ice layer shook violently, and a thick energy beam penetrated the ice layer above and hit several military wolves below. Those military wolves, which were more powerful than the Wardens of Warcraft Hell, let out a scream. No bones remain. Everyone scratched the cold iron fence and looked up. The collapse above became bigger and bigger, and countless thick layers of ice crashed down, leaving a large hole about 30 meters in diameter, as if the sky was cracking. What is going on? The sky is falling. It couldn't be that some big boss escaped from prison, right? This strength is too terrifying, and it actually penetrated the 4th level of the scorching hell. At the same time, Magellan was also punched down by Cheng Cheng, causing a deep pit on the ice of freezing hell. Advertisement: this freezing hell is Magellan's forbidden area. He knows this better than anyone else. Once he gets here, his strength will be greatly restricted. Magellan's eyes were gloomy. He didn't expect Cheng Cheng to discover his weakness so quickly. His legs suddenly exerted force, and he rose up from the ground and rushed into the sky, trying to return to the 4th floor. In the scorching hell, it is his home field. Cheng Cheng stood proudly at the entrance of the cave with the Zhenhai sword in his hand, like a heavenly soldier in general who could guard against 10,000 people. He raised the Zhenhai sword with both hands high, and the golden sword light on the sword body soared 30 meters. With a strike to the head, Magellan was knocked back to the ground again. Boom! The ice surface trembled, and a big crater appeared again. Magellan, who was lying in the pit, struggled to get up. The purple venom that kept coming out of his body gradually condensed into a layer of white frost, and the flow rate began to slow down. In this freezing hell, even the phone bug cannot survive the extremely low temperature. As long as his venom stays here for more than 5 minutes, it will be completely frozen and its power will be greatly weakened. Cheng Cheng looked down at Magellan below and sneered. How does freezing hell feel? Let you, the warden, experience it too. The surrounding criminals in the prison were all stunned. This man was the strongest man in Impel Down City, and he was being hacked around like a living target? The domineering and sharp sword spirit exuding from this white-haired young man is too strong, right? Who is this young man? Is the world out there so crazy now? Cheng Cheng didn't give Magellan a chance to breathe. If he didn't get rid of him quickly, he would be in trouble when the time for the Super Saiyan state came. The golden sword energy doubled again, and huge sword energy fell from the sky with a magnificent momentum. Magellan's body was covered in venom, and he summoned the red skeleton giant holding 2 swords. However, the surface of the red skull's body had been frozen, and his movements were extremely slow. The 2 swords in his hands slashed at the golden sword light like a machine. In an instant, the huge golden sword light penetrated the red skull's body and stabbed into Magellan's heart. Magellan fell to the ground and spit out a mouthful of blood. He tried his best to command the red skull to attack, but it still had no effect. Cheng Cheng, who was high in the sky, narrowed his eyes and threw the Zhenhai sword. It turned into a black lightning and penetrated into Magellan's heart. The strongest man in Impel Down who struggled to stand up was nailed to the ice field. Chapter 198s ******** Paradise. All the prisoners looked at this scene in stunned silence. This man who was known as the strongest man in Impel Down City died like this. Hey, brother, can you save us? I will repay you well. If you can rescue me, my life will be yours. Even if I die, I will never come to Impel City again. This place is simply hell. The golden light all over Cheng Cheng's body dissipated, his blonde hair turned silvery white again, and the golden airflow around him disappeared. He walked over and checked Magellan's breath again to confirm that he was indeed dead. Then he pulled out the Zhenhai sword and put it on his shoulder. The blood on the sword quickly condensed into red ice crystals, making the Zhenhai sword look a bit more murderous and domineering. After walking to the prison door, Cheng Cheng said in a deep voice, I don't need any repayment from you, just release the criminals imprisoned in other places. I think you are all smart people. The more people who escape, the greater your chances of escaping. People from the Marine headquarters may be on their way to support now, so escape as soon as possible. The criminals discussed it and then split up to rescue other criminals imprisoned on this floor. At this time, a strangely dressed man walked slowly next to the body of Warden Magellan. His hairstyle is a bit like a plum blossom, the left half is orange and the right half is white. Even the coat on his body is the same color. He wears a pair of glasses that are half blue and half red. From a distance, he looks like cracked. A lightning-shaped scar penetrated from his forehead to his right eye. He looked very serious. He held a glass of red wine in his left hand and shook it gently. His movements were very elegant and skillful. He lowered his head and looked at Magellan in shock, who was lying on the ground frozen stiff. He raised his head and drank all the red wine in one breath, still seeming to doubt his eyes. Pushing into the city, there is still someone who can kill the Warden Magellan. He took off his glasses, his chin became pointed, his skin became fair and round, his chest swelled, and his body curves became concave and convex, instantly transforming into an elegant woman. She checked carefully again and found that Magellan was indeed dead. The white-haired young man looking in front of him was shocked. Could it be that he killed him? Just now she felt some vibrations on the ground, so she walked out of the passage of the transvestite paradise and went to the upper floor to check the situation. When she got here, she only saw a big hole open on the top of the 5th floor, and red magma was constantly flowing down from the hole. The magma dripped onto the 5th layer of ice, emitting a burst of black smoke before quickly extinguishing and condensing. Then I saw with my own eyes a young man throwing a sword casually and inserting it into Magellan's heart. Advertisement, but he still couldn't believe it. How could this white-haired guy have such powerful and terrifying strength even though he looked so young? After Cheng Cheng rescued the criminals, he inserted the Zhenhai sword into his back again. His white hair and black sword made him look extremely conspicuous on this ice field. He turned around with a smile. waved hello to the deputy commander of the Revolutionary Army's Great Root Army, and introduced himself first. Hello, Lightning Beauty, I am Cheng Cheng, the chief instructor of the Revolutionary Army, and I am here to rescue you. Lightning took a step back, his pupils shrank, and the red wine glass in his hand fell to the ground and broke into pieces. Revolutionary Army Chief Instructor? When did such a position become available? Who else is qualified to hold this position? Next, regardless of whether he believed Cheng Cheng's words or not, Lightning took him into the transvestite paradise located between the 5th and 6th floors. Regardless of whether Cheng Cheng's identity is true or false, the prison warden Magellan is indeed dead. In any case, this is an excellent opportunity to escape from prison. Thinking of this, Lightning put on his glasses again, restored his body as a man, and quickened his pace. Army Commander Ivankov must be notified as soon as possible. Soon, Cheng Cheng followed Ling Ling and the two of them into an extremely hidden small hole in the forest, passed through the small hole and arrived at the transvestite paradise. Although Cheng Cheng was mentally prepared, he secretly swallowed after seeing the lively bar-like atmosphere in front of him and the transvestites in different costumes. Then he picked up an unopened bottle of wine, opened the cap with a flick of his finger, raised his head and drank half of the bottle. Only then did he feel much calmer. Everyone laughed when they saw Cheng Cheng's embarrassed expression. Which newcomer here doesn't look like this? There was another person who cried for joy when he came here before. Everyone was joking. Hey, where did Lightning bring back such a handsome little brother? Let me guess whether he is a boy or a girl. Nonsense. Why do you need to guess? This guy's chest is so flat, he must be a boy. Advertisement. That's not necessarily true. It may be that you are hiding it very well. Come on, let me check you out. Don't worry, little sister. With your face that is indistinguishable from men to women, I will protect you from now on. Lightning, who was anxious to interrupt, could not wait for the opportunity, so he simply grabbed a wine bottle, jumped onto the stage that was usually used for performances, and suddenly fell down. Boom. The sound was crisp and the wine bottle shattered on the ground. The lively atmosphere suddenly became quiet. Everyone in the Ladyboy Paradise looked at Lightning. Even Ivankov, the commander of the Ladyboy King's Revolutionary Army, looked at Lightning in surprise. Lightning took off his glasses, glanced at everyone with a solemn expression, and said in a deep voice, "Now the entire impelled down city is in chaos. The warden Magellan has been killed by our chief instructor, and most of the other jailers are fighting the Black Justice pirates on the sea. Ivankov, now is our last chance." The atmosphere became extremely quiet, everyone's eyes almost popped out, and everyone looked serious. The Demon King Ivankov suddenly stood up and slapped the table. The table in front of him suddenly shattered. He stared at the Lightning and asked, "Who is the chief instructor? Is the information reliable?" Lightning glanced at Cheng Cheng and replied calmly, "He is the Revolutionary Army chief instructor. I also saw him kill Magellan with my own eyes." Army Commander Ivankov took a deep look at the young man who claimed to be the chief instructor of the Revolutionary Army. From this young man with white hair and a black sword, she could indeed feel an extremely powerful sense of oppression. This kind of oppression had only been seen on long before. Then she no longer hesitated and immediately ordered loudly, "Everyone, don't pack any luggage and set off immediately." Everyone showed excitement and rushed to the ground like a tide. Ivankov slowly came to Cheng Cheng and asked with a smile, "Is Long okay now? How are the other members of the Revolutionary Army doing?" Cheng Cheng smiled slightly, knowing that it was the Demon King who was verifying his identity, so he didn't care and answered the wrong question. "The love braised pork made in the Revolutionary Army canteen is delicious, and there is a photo of you on the wall behind Long's office. By the way, there is an unfinished nautical chart on his desk. I told him before that without your additions, the nautical chart will never be completed." Ivankov no longer had any worries, solemnly bid farewell to Cheng Cheng and left. Cheng Cheng shouted from behind, "After escaping, don't rush away yet. There will be an unprecedented battle soon. Sabo will soon lead the army to join the battle." Chapter 199 Who signs? The body of the transvestite King Ivankov was shaken, and then he stopped hesitating and was the last one to withdraw from the transvestite paradise. Cheng Cheng looked at the lights flashing around him. There was no shortage of stage, microphone, bar, and wine cabinet. He raised his head and took a sip of red wine. He smiled bitterly and said, "What kind of prison is this? It's clearly a paradise." The domineering power of seeing and hearing was activated instantly, and the three-dimensional projection structure of the Impel City was clearly displayed in Cheng Cheng's mind. Cheng Cheng, carrying the Zhenhai sword on his back, walked forward slowly and arrived at the center of the transvestite paradise. After slowly pulling out the Zhenhai sword, Cheng Cheng held the sword in both hands, leapt high and raised the Zhenhai sword above his head. The sword glow surged, and the sword fell from the sky and penetrated into the ground, leaving only the hilt exposed. Boom! The ground instantly collapsed and cracked, and a hurricane rolled up, blowing the surrounding tables to pieces and rolling around. With his domineering knowledge, he can feel that this should be the most vulnerable place. Cheng Cheng narrowed his eyes, his hands suddenly exerted force, and the sword light rose dozens of meters. The sword energy then penetrated the ground and exploded a deep pit 3 meters in diameter, causing the entire ground to shake. Cheng Cheng jumped down without hesitation. The 6 underground floors are the lowest level of Impel Down City and are called Eternal Hell. Here are some great pirates, who are either on death row or imprisoned for life. All the criminals are monster pirates who have been erased from history because they were too vicious. The crimes these people committed were so heinous that even the world government did not dare to publish them in newspapers because they wanted to save face. After Cheng Cheng fell to the ground, except for a ray of light falling from the hole above his head, the surroundings were completely dark. The fences of these prisons were reinforced with sea stones. The criminals were all wearing heavy iron chains and sea stone handcuffs. After the devil fruit expired, these criminals had no ability to break free from these restraints. I can only wait quietly in prison for death to come. The big pirates who were doing nothing all looked towards the hole. After so many years, they did not expect that such an accident would also happen on the 6th floor. Advertisement. Cheng Cheng glanced around, and sure enough he didn't find Ace. He didn't have much hope in his heart, and he couldn't say he was disappointed. He said loudly to this group of the most vicious pirates, "Listen, I will only say this once. Anyone who wants to leave here will only have this chance to sign a contract with me." After saying that, all these criminals crowded together on the fence, holding onto the fence with both hands, and stuck their heads out to look at Cheng Cheng. "Boy, I don't know how you got in, but if you can let me out, I, San Juan Wolf, will be willing to protect your prosperity and wealth for the rest of your life. Hey, white-haired swordsman, if you can use the broadsword on your back to cut off this annoying iron door, I, Baskshot, will be your thug for the rest of my life after I get out." The others were still chattering non-stop. Cheng Cheng's eyes narrowed and he snorted coldly. In an instant, a hurricane rolled up from under his feet, enveloping everyone with an extremely domineering aura. Ah, it turns out to be Conqueror's hockey. So powerful Conquerors, he has the qualifications of an emperor. At this moment, everyone finally understood how powerful Cheng Cheng was, and stared at Cheng Cheng dumbfounded. The great pirates who had just promised Cheng Cheng glory and wealth also remained silent at this moment. How could someone with this Conqueror's domineering attitude be short of money? Cheng Cheng glanced at everyone and said coldly, "Those who agree to sign a contract with me should take a step forward, and those who do not agree should retreat and lean against the wall. Otherwise, don't blame me for being ruthless with my sword." The big pirates finally stopped looking at Cheng Cheng in a condescending manner, and instead thought seriously about what Cheng Cheng had just said. As for the content of the signed contract, no one asked. They were waiting here to die, what else did they care about? As long as they can leave this place that is scarier than hell, no matter what they are asked to do, it will be better than their current situation. Besides, isn't it just a contract? It's just a piece of white paper, who can it be bound to? Some pirates made their choices quickly, while others still considered it carefully in their minds. Cheng Cheng walked slowly to a prison and saw old acquaintances, the red hedgehog-headed Captain Kid, and Kira, who was wearing a mask. Both of them were wearing black and white prison uniforms and were watching Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng chuckled and greeted the two of them. "Captain Kid, long time no see. How are you enjoying your stay here?" Advertisement Kid, who was clinging to the seafloor stone guardrail, stared at Cheng Cheng. "Why are you here?" Cheng Cheng said, "I don't have time to talk nonsense to you. I just killed Magellan." At this moment, the sea above is also being besieged by the Black Justice pirates. Reinforcements from the Marine headquarters are already on the way. So let's get straight to the point. Last time I said I would make you the captain of my ship. Now I invite you one last time. Captain Kid's eyes widened and he took a breath. Warden Magellan's strength was comparable to General Marine, but he was actually killed by Cheng Cheng. Moreover, when he was captured by Kizaru before, the three Marine generals Akainu, Aokiji and Kizaru all landed on the Sabo Islands. He originally thought that he would see Cheng Cheng in prison soon. Although I have seen Cheng Cheng now, it is completely different from what I thought. Captain Kid gritted his teeth and asked, "I only want to ask you one thing. How did you escape that day?" "Ah ha ha ha." Cheng Cheng suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed wildly. "Run away. Why should I run away? In Sabodi, I killed Akainu, defeated Aokiji, and Kizaru was seriously injured by me. Why should I run away?" Kid suddenly clenched his fists, his nails pierced his skin, his palms were full of blood, and he stared straight at Cheng Cheng. Although he didn't want to believe it, he had to believe Cheng Cheng's conqueror's domineering attitude. Otherwise, how did he get here now? There is no way Magellan, the warden, would have allowed him to appear here easily. Captain Kid, who was shocked, asked, "How did you get me out?" Cheng Cheng chuckled, drew his sword and waved it casually. The light of the sword flashed, and the heavy sea tower stone chain on the prison erupted with a burst of sparks and shattered into pieces. Without the restraints of the prison, the criminals are crowded and about to rush out of the prison iron gate. Cheng Cheng narrowed his eyes, swung his sword, and opened a deep ravine in the ground. His sword energy was fierce, and he said in a cold voice, "Those who want to leave, sign the contract first." Those criminals who did not know what heinous crime they had committed retreated in order, not daring to cross the line at all. Now their hands are still wearing sea tower stone handcuffs, and even if they have great abilities, they cannot use them. Cheng Cheng wanted to kill them with just one sword. He gently flipped his palm, and the great holy grail, emitting a faint golden light, appeared in front of everyone. Captain Kid pushed through the crowd, walked to the front, and said loudly, "I'll sign." Chapter 200 Annihilation by flying ashes in full view of everyone, Captain Kid quickly signed a contract with Cheng Cheng. They did not expect that this strange contract did not even require paper, it was so simple and casual. Then Cheng Cheng slashed with his sword, and the seafloor stone handcuffs on Kid's hands instantly fell apart and he was free again. Kira, who was wearing a mask, also stepped forward, and the second one signed a contract with Cheng Cheng. He and Kid were good friends who grew up together. They went to sea together when they were young and formed a pirate group. Because Kira's laughter was weird, he was always laughed at by the people around him, but Kid would always hesitate every time. He beat up those who laughed at Kira. Now that Kid has signed a contract and joined the Black Justice Pirates, he has no hesitation. The two of them have always advanced and retreated together. When these criminals saw that Kid and Kira had regained their freedom so easily, they could no longer hold back. They stepped forward one by one and rushed to sign up. What if it's too late and those Marines come? Wouldn't it be such a good opportunity to escape? Cheng Cheng also accepted the order without any courtesy and asked them to line up and sign the contract one by one. The pirates who can be imprisoned in the deepest part of the Impel City do not need to consider their strength at all. If these extremely vicious pirates are not extremely powerful, they are not qualified to commit heinous crimes. After all 8 people in this prison signed contracts, Cheng Cheng was ready to move to the next prison ahead. But at this moment, a sudden change occurred. 2 people who had just signed a contract with Cheng Cheng were suddenly attacked from behind by Cheng Cheng. These 2 people were both great pirates who became famous in the world 20 years ago. Even if he didn't take action for such a long time, once he did, the wind and thunder would shake him. There was a tall, fat boxer with black lightning wrapped around his hands who was extremely domineering, and the other was a skinny old man, who was extremely fast, and his arms were pitch black, stabbing into Cheng Cheng's back like a sharp blade, with an astonishing momentum. No one else who signed the contract stopped the 2 of them from doing this, because this was what most of them wanted to do most at the moment. What on earth are these 2 losers doing? Advertisement. I naively thought that as long as I signed a verbally painless contract, everything would be fine. Cheng Cheng walked slowly, and after discovering the 2 men's sneak attack, he didn't even turn around. He just stretched out his hand, snapped his fingers, and said softly, "With my order, destroy them." How could any of them be willing to obey the orders of a young white-haired boy if they were not famous figures on the sea? Katrine Demai, who was at the very back of the group, quietly moved toward the entrance of the cave. She had an extremely long nose just like Usopp, but the lipstick on her lips was extremely heavy and she looked extremely vicious. But thankfully, she did it. Katrine Demai pushed her feet hard and stood upright. She looked up to the sky and laughed and said, "White-haired boy, thank you. I'm gone. When I see you in the future, I will give you something. You leave a whole body." The old man was left with only skin and bones and not much flesh. His body suddenly shattered and turned into gray dust and dissipated. One of the broken arms fell down and touched the sole of another person's foot. Cheng Cheng sneered and said, "Any of you can try to escape or kill me, as long as you are not afraid of death." Cheng Cheng turned around and looked at all of them, and chuckled, "I forgot to tell you just now, as long as you sign a contract with me, your life is mine. You must die whenever I want you to." The 2 people who attacked were getting closer and closer to Cheng Cheng's back. While Cheng Cheng was signing a contract with the next prisoner, she had slowly moved to the entrance of the cave. She glanced cautiously towards Cheng Cheng, but Cheng Cheng did not notice her. Cheng Cheng, who was signing a contract with others, shook his head slightly, stretched out his hand, snapped his fingers, and said softly, "With my life, break it." It even turned directly into fly ash, with no bones left. The other person was like a building block with its bottom support removed, falling to the ground and turning into gray dust. 2 meters, 1 meter, half a meter, less than a palm away from Cheng Cheng's back. Cheng Cheng still didn't turn around to react, and the 2 of them became even more excited. San Juan Hungry Wolf retreated, pointed at Cheng Cheng with trembling fingers and asked, "You, what did you just do? Why did they become like this?" Other criminals also looked on with cold eyes. This child was indeed too young. They might all be big pirates. Can we talk about the spirit of contract with them? They were exactly the same as the 2 people who had sneak attacks before. Advertisement. Everyone was stunned and looked at the 2 people who had vowed to kill Cheng Cheng just now in shock. Why didn't they continue to attack? This kid is dead, the other criminals all think so. None of them saw how Cheng Cheng took action. Why did those 2 powerful people die so mysteriously? What kind of sorcery is this? A gust of breeze blew by, picking up the 2 piles of gray dust and intertwining them. The ashes of the 2 people couldn't tell who was who. The other criminals immediately looked at Cheng Cheng with dumbfounded eyes. The criminal who had also wanted to take action just now swallowed secretly and was extremely lucky. The bloated San Juan Hungry Wolf came over, stretched out a finger, and gently touched the skinny old man's shoulder. If these 2 people can succeed in the sneak attack, Cheng Cheng will be seriously injured even if he does not die. At that time, no matter whether he has a contract or not, they will just swarm them. As long as they kill Cheng Cheng, no one can restrain them. Then the skin surface of the 2 people began to turn gray, their eyes lost their energy, and their life force disappeared in this moment. I don't believe there are such terrifying devil fruit abilities in the world. The body of Katrine Demai, who had just escaped from the hole, instantly turned gray, like a stone falling from the sky. When it fell to the ground, her body was torn apart and turned into fly ash without a drop of blood. Everyone was shocked, and they were all wondering how Cheng Cheng did it. As for Kid, he looked at the 2 people who took action coldly. If what Cheng Cheng said was true, then how could a powerful man who could defeat Aokiji and kill Akainu at the same time let these 2 villains succeed? Finally, she arrived right below the cave entrance as if nothing had happened. The distance was less than 100 meters, making her walk feel like she had walked 10,000 meters. It felt like time passed extremely long. No one can find her by then, and she is fully capable of escaping. Katrine Demai was very excited. As long as she left Cheng Cheng's sight, she could use the 9-tails fox form devil fruit to transform into other people. Even her clothes, height, weight, and voice could become exactly the same. The 2 people who were about to succeed in the sneak attack were stiff in the air, staying in the air in an extremely weird posture, as if they were petrified, motionless. Chapter 201 Miracle. The group of extremely vicious people who were making waves in the outside world all remained silent, and no one else dared to try at will. It is true that they are desperados, but they are not fools. They are not afraid of fighting to the death with powerful people. On the contrary, deep down in their hearts, they are eager to fight. However, the ways of death of these three people are all too weird, and no one can see clearly how Cheng Cheng took action. I just saw that after snapping his fingers and saying a simple word, the man turned into a pile of ashes, with no bones left. The people queuing up to sign the contract immediately stood up, and the crooked formation straightened up. Their eyes looking at Cheng Cheng were full of fear. After going out, it seems to be a good choice to hang out with such a perverted character on the sea. Soon all the 6 people in the second prison signed the contract and stood obediently behind Cheng Cheng. No one had any thoughts of escaping. Cheng Cheng once again chopped off a prison chain with his sword. This was quite special. There was only one person in the prison. His hands and feet were fixed to cross wooden posts by sea tower stone chains. His head was covered with a steel helmet, making it difficult to see clearly. Face. The man's muscles were like steel, his body was strong, his yellow hair hung down around his waist, and he didn't know whether to live or die. Kid said hurriedly. I advise you not to go in. That guy is not a human being at all. You will regret it if you let him out. Cheng Cheng walked in without hesitation and laughed. Not a human? Even if he is the 10th palace of Yama, as long as he signs a contract with me, he will have to die again. In the dark and cold cell, with a flash of blue sword light, the steel helmet of the strong man who knew nothing about life and death was split into 2, and the fracture was extremely smooth. Revealing a ferocious face and cold eyes, he looked like a ghost king who had just crawled out of hell. Everyone else took a step back, obviously extremely afraid of this person. Cheng Cheng took another step forward with an expressionless expression, and said calmly, Douglas Bullet, what I just said was very clear, so you don't need me to repeat it, right? Bullet, who was tied up with countless iron chains, stared at Cheng Cheng like a ghost, thinking about how to speak because he hadn't spoken for so long. After a while, a hoarse and stiff voice came out of Bullet's mouth. You are very strong. You seem to be much stronger than Roger at this age. Advertisement, that's for sure. Roger can't possibly have a system. Cheng Cheng doesn't take this kind of praise to heart at all, because there is no comparison between the two. Although he can achieve this kind of achievement today, it is inseparable from his own talent, but without a system, he would be the same as Zoro at best, strength. In that case, are you ready to sign a contract with me? Cheng Cheng asked. Bullet's neck turned like a machine, and the cervical vertebra bones inside made a crackling sound. No, the outside world has no attraction for me anymore. I am fine staying here. After Roger's death, my life has no meaning. Although you are very strong and you are very likely to surpass Roger in the future, you are not him. Cheng Cheng narrowed his eyes and said, I know you admire Roger very much. After Roger's death in One Piece, you also used to aimlessly destroy everything to vent your anger. Everyone's life is meaningful. If you want to transcend Roger, then do what Roger wanted to do but failed to do. One Piece, even though Roger's life has come to an end, he has also begun the age of discovery. Do you, a self-proclaimed admirer of Roger, plan to wait here to die? Bullet asked in a low voice. What did Roger want to do that he failed to do? He has completed the voyage of the Grand Line, conquered the Grand Line, and found the legendary secret treasure. Is there anything else that he cannot do? Cheng Cheng chuckled and did not answer Bullet's question. Instead, he asked, then what do you think Roger would have done next if he had not been terminally ill? Bullet, who was tied to the bracket, fell into deep thought. After a while, suddenly a ray of light burst out from his fierce eyes, and he murmured. You mean, Roger will overthrow the rule of the Celestial Dragons? Cheng Cheng smiled and said, not only that, after overthrowing the rule of the Tianlong people, we must also establish a new order. I think One Piece Roger will definitely do this. Bullet's body suddenly trembled with excitement, and the chains on his body made random noises, echoing in the eternal hell. Yes, if it is Roger, he will definitely do this, he will. His ambition is so big. The two of them did not deliberately avoid other people in their conversation. Those ferocious big pirates were all full of energy. Those of them who came out to hang out on the sea were more or less influenced by Roger. Who wouldn't want to inherit the ultimate secret treasure that Roger left on the sea? Bullet, who was full of excitement, quickly calmed down, his eyes became dim, and he murmured. It's a pity, Roger is dead. Even if I did these things, he can't see it. Advertisement, it's boring. Cheng Cheng continued to seduce. Then what if I say you have a chance to meet Roger in the future? Suddenly, the big pirates around him looked at Cheng Cheng with dumbfounded eyes, wondering if they had heard wrong just now. One Piece Roger has been dead for so many years, how could he meet Roger? Even if this white-haired boy deceived Bullet, he couldn't do that. In Roger Town Square, thousands of people saw Roger's death with their own eyes, how could it be false? Bullet stared at Cheng Cheng with sharp eyes and asked word by word. Are you sure you mean you saw Roger with your own eyes? Although I can't do it now, there is a high possibility that I can do it in the future, Cheng Cheng nodded seriously. Bullet, who is known as the descendant of the devil, suddenly laughed wildly, as sharply as a ghost. Boy, why should I believe you? Cheng Cheng just stared at Bullet without saying a word, showing no fear. After the laughter, Bullet's expression dimmed a bit and he continued. At least you have to give me some proof before I will believe you. Cheng Cheng asked. What proof do you want? Bullet said in a deep voice. Let me see a miracle. Cheng Cheng laughed. This was too easy for him, and said with a smile. Sign the contract first. Bullet, who was once a member of the Roger Pirates, threatened sternly. "If you dare to deceive me, you will die miserably, I swear." Cheng Cheng never cared about such harmless threats. Soon, like everyone else, he also signed a contract with Bullet. Bullet, the descendant of the devil, had 3 more light golden lines on his forehead. It seemed that not only was there less ghostly aura on his body, but he actually had a bit more sacred aura. Cheng Cheng took a step forward, put his fingers together between Bullet's eyebrows, and the time gem inlaid on the space ring emitted a long green light, and shouted softly. Go! Chapter 202 Time Travel. Without warning, a gust of breeze blew by, and Bullet, known as the Devil's Descendant, disappeared instantly. The sea tower stone chains that originally bound Bullet became loose and made a crisp sound. Cheng Cheng was sweating profusely, his chest and back were soaked with sweat, and he was panting as he looked at the green lighting time stone. Because this is just a fragment of the time stone, he himself does not know which time and space Bullet will be sent to. Whether he can see Roger depends on his luck in this time travel. However, since Cheng Cheng dared to promise to Bullet that he would see Roger in the future, he was still somewhat sure. As long as the system could reward him with the other half of the time gem fragments later, he should be able to see Roger accurately by then. The other big pirates were even more silent, and became extremely obedient and obeyed orders during the subsequent contract signing with Cheng Cheng. They have firmly believed in one thing. As long as they follow Cheng Cheng, no matter what the outcome will be in the future, they will definitely be able to escape today. Bullet didn't feel his body moving, but the surrounding scene was changing rapidly. The prison, the sea, the sky, the sun, stars, white clouds, the alternation of day and night, the changing of things and the movement of stars. He felt that almost all familiar scenes were flying past him. He wanted to reach out and grab them, but he couldn't catch them anyway. Like a dream bubble. After a period of spinning, the scenery around Bullet finally stopped changing and gradually stabilized. Only then did he feel that his body had a center of gravity and he found that down-to-earth feeling again. Bullet, dressed in prison uniform, looked around at the completely unfamiliar scene around him. He was now standing on the edge of a small island, with the rolling blue sea behind him, the roaring waves, and the clear sky. The small island in front was lush with trees and grass. As Bullet walked, he greedily breathed in the fresh air here. Having stayed in Impel-Down City for too long, he was used to the dark, humid and dirty air there, and he had long forgotten the original smell of the outside air. Only then did he come back to his senses. Wasn't he still in Pushing City Prison just now? Why did he suddenly come here? Is this an illusion? Or did that kid teleport his own dimension here? Advertisement. Bullet sneered. What kind of miracle could this be? As long as he ate a space-related devil fruit, it shouldn't be difficult to do this. Memories from more than 20 years ago suddenly came to his mind. Suddenly his eyes lit up and he remembered that they had fought here with the Whitebeard pirates for 3 days and 3 nights. Bullet felt like his brain was running out of energy. When the others heard that Whitebeard was coming, their expressions became a little solemn. In that case, let's have a good fight, a man with long yellow hair and glasses advised. Captain, we just had a fight, so be careful. The pirate in the red coat laughed wildly. If you want to catch me, you have to at least summon Garp and Sengoku. Do you understand? Your strength is too weak, and it is not worth my while. If you're in a good mood, just listen to his chatter. If you're in a bad mood, just punch him to death. At this moment, all his anger was gone. He looked ahead with trembling lips, and kept mumbling. Impossible, this is absolutely impossible. A child wearing a red hat put down the telescope in his hand, his nose trembling like a red ping-pong ball, and shouted excitedly. Bullet walked forward expressionlessly. Now that he had come out of that ghost place, he was free. As for the white-haired boy who signed the contract, we would talk about it later. Could someone be impersonating Roger? Bullet didn't care if these beasts were targeting him. He snorted, stamped his feet suddenly, and sent out a strong gust of wind that spread around. Bullet, who continued to walk forward, reached out and grabbed the neck of a crocodile, biting its head. He held the crocodile with one hand, like eating corn on the cob, and nodded as he walked, dripping with blood along the way. In the end, the two sides tied, and Roger also borrowed Kazuki Oden from Whitebeard. Bullet, who was standing in the distance, had shock in his eyes and his hands were shaking with excitement, although he had not yet seen the front of the red-clothed pirate. Ah, Captain, Whitebeard's ship is right ahead. He seems to have noticed us and will be coming soon. After a while, the skeletons of 2 crocodiles and an elephant were scattered in the surrounding grass. Advertisement. He even saw himself in a corner when he was young more than 20 years ago. Suddenly, there was a slight vibration on the ground, and a group of wild beasts rushed towards him in front of him. Countless lions, tigers, elephants, gorillas, and crocodiles were all running in a hurry. The pirate leader in a red coat turned around at this moment and laughed. There was no fear, but his eyes were full of expectation. Gold D. Roger, as well as others. There are also the little red-nosed Buggy, the little Shanks who is happily eating chicken drumsticks next to him, the yellow-haired Rayleigh who does not look old at all, and the ship's Dr. Kurokas. These people are still more than 20 years old. The appearance before Whitebeard? I haven't seen him for a long time. The birds in front have been alarmed. It seems that Whitebeard and the others are about to go ashore. Bullet's whole body became stiff, and an unprecedented look of dementia appeared in his eyes. Bullet, who was said to have ghostly eyes, actually had a trace of warmth in his eyes. But having said that, the white-haired boy was indeed very strong, and he had to admit this. However, at this moment, the group of pirates in front had a new situation. There were hundreds of Marines lying around the battleship, fighting with a group of pirates. However, the disparity in strength between the two sides was too great. After a while, the several hundred Marines were seriously injured, and they were all lying on the ground rolling around in misery. Bullet had eaten and drank and walked to a high boulder, ready to take a good sleep, but he saw a blazing Marine battleship on the edge of the island on the other side in the distance. He has been dead for so many years, so why is he still alive now? This is impossible. What is happening? One of the pirates in red clothes lifted up a Marine general and threw it heavily to the ground. The white cloak on the Marine general's back had already become tattered. The beasts in front seemed to have suffered a huge impact. They all flew backwards and rolled on the ground for more than 10 years before stopping. Most of these dozen beasts were already dying. The pirate in red in front of him was none other than Roger himself, and he was still a young Roger. He looked exactly like Roger in his memory more than 20 years ago, without the slightest hint of age. Thinking of this, Bullet suddenly felt a strong anger in his heart. He dared to impersonate Roger and seek death. But that familiar figure from behind will never be forgotten in his life, and coupled with this man's bold words, he is absolutely unmistakable. Chapter 203 Haisha Jinbei Bullet could no longer control the excitement in his heart, and his whole body's momentum surged. On his fists, black lightning domineering wrapped around him and burst out in circles of fierce wind. The Roger pirates not far ahead were all staring here with solemn expressions. Roger and Rayleigh looked at each other and saw the caution in each other's eyes. But when One Piece Roger saw the man's appearance, he was a little surprised. He looked at Bullet, who was hiding in the corner and not talking to everyone, and joked. Bullet, this person really looks like you. I guess you will look like this 20 years from now. The young Bullet looked disdainful and snorted. I will definitely be stronger than that person in 20 years. First of all, I will definitely surpass you. After their brief conversation, Bullet, who was wearing prison uniform, rushed towards him like a cannonball. He was moving very fast along the way. The black domineering lightning wrapped around his fists became thicker and thicker, and his eyes were full of excitement. With a ferocious look on his face, he laughed wildly and shouted, One Piece Roger, did you see that? I have surpassed you? Roger looked up to the sky and laughed, charging forward with all his strength without giving in. His right hand clenched the saber at his waist, and before it was even unsheathed, it was already wrapped with black lightning. In an instant, the two people had closed the distance. Bullet roared angrily and punched Roger hard. He must prove himself to Roger. He had been waiting for this punch for 20 years. The endless anger and unwillingness he had accumulated in the past 20 years poured out at this moment. The air shook and a sonic boom sounded. Roger, the One Piece on the opposite side, also pulled out his dark saber in an instant. His momentum surged, and the black sword light tore through the air. However, at this critical moment, Bullet suddenly felt that the surrounding scene was changing again with familiarity. His eyes showed fear and unwillingness, and he shouted, No, give me 1 more minute, 1 minute is enough. But Cheng Cheng, who was signing a contract with others, didn't hear Bullet and didn't dare to shout. Even if he heard it, there was nothing he could do now. Cheng Cheng narrowed his eyes slightly and noticed that the green light on the space ring had dimmed and turned into an ordinary emerald. Advertisement. A breeze blew by, and Bullet, wearing a black and white striped prison uniform, reappeared in the prison, looking at Cheng Cheng with a look of reluctance. Cheng Cheng asked with a smile, It seems that your trip is not going well? Bullet strode to Cheng Cheng angrily and begged, Hurry up and let me go back again. From now on, my life will be yours. Cheng Cheng shook his head slightly. First of all, when you signed the contract with me, your life was already mine. Furthermore, my current ability is limited, and you can never imagine the cost of letting you time travel. Moreover, this trip is also random, and the time and place are beyond my control, so I cannot agree to it. Bullet took a step back and slumped to the ground. Cheng Cheng looked down at him and said coldly, No matter what, you have seen the miracle I gave you, so how do you choose now? Bullet, the descendant of the devil, looked downcast, with his yellow hair hanging on the cold ground. He punched a big hole in the ground and said, I will keep my promise. Cheng Cheng said loudly, Very good, in that case, I will keep my promise and give myself a chance to see Roger again in the future. All of you, listen up. From now on, you belong to the 4th Division of the Black Justice Pirates. The captain is Bullet and the vice captain is Kid. There are a total of 18 of these extremely vicious pirates, all of whom have signed contracts with Cheng Cheng. Regardless of whether they are willing or not, there is no second choice. None of them made a sound, and all of them were in high spirits, already looking forward to dominating the world at sea in the future. Among the 18 of them, which one of them didn't once dominate a large pirate group, but now they belong to the same pirate group, so they can't dominate the world? Cheng Cheng poured cold water on them and said in a cold voice, On my ship, I have only one rule for you people, and I will not give you a second chance. As long as you violate my rules, I will discuss it with you and let you die directly. Miss Orb, a female pirate with a proud figure, asked softly, Captain, what are the rules? Cheng Cheng's eyes were like lightning. He glanced at them and said, Don't do bad things. As for the specific standards, you know it in your heart. Anyone who doesn't understand can die now. None of the 18 great pirates uttered a rebuttal. At most, a few of them looked at him with disdain. As for saying anything harsh, they would never dare to say anything harsh. Advertisement now, no matter who takes the lead in being the thorn in the side who crosses the line, he will definitely be killed by Cheng Cheng's most severe thunderous means. Isn't that how the 3 people who were reduced to ashes just died like this? However, at this moment, a loud roar came from the innermost prison. Let me out, hey, that white-haired boy, no matter what you are going to do to me, let me out quickly. I have to stop that war. At the far end of the road, there was a very dark prison. Cheng Cheng did not check it. There was only one dim light inside, and the faint shadow of a human figure was swaying on the wall, looking like it was about to go out at any moment. The man who roared was tied to his chest with two seafloor stone chains, struggling hard, and let out a series of sound. If this man didn't make a sound, the other pirates would even forget that there was a criminal inside. But the pirates who had been signed by Cheng Cheng all looked at the man inside with some pity. This man was also unlucky. Almost every day, jailers would come and beat him severely. Every time the jailer walked out of the prison, the mace was dripping with blood. At this time, this person actually spoke to Cheng Cheng in such a commanding tone. What if he wasn't seeking death? Sure enough, Cheng Cheng had already walked over slowly, and the others sneered in their hearts. Unlucky people are really unlucky in everything they do. Cheng Cheng stood still in front of the prison door and cut open the prison lock with a sword. Apart from Jinbei, who was roaring and struggling, he saw an empty chain beside him. There was no one around at the moment. Jinbei, who was covered in wounds, looked at Cheng Cheng with firm eyes. He hit his head on the wall behind him and said loudly, "Even if I die, I will stop this war. Once the war breaks out, if that man dies, all the small islands protected by his white beard name will fall into war again. But if I stay here, I can't do anything." Cheng Cheng looked at Kaishu Jinbei, one of the Shichibukai, with soft eyes, pointed to the empty chain in the opposite corner, where Ace's aura had lingered, and asked, "When did the people who were here leave?" Jinbei was slightly startled, not expecting the white-haired young man to ask this question, and asked doubtfully, "Do you also know Mr. Ace?" Chapter 204 A powerful enemy attacks. Cheng Cheng nodded lightly, stepped into the last prison, and said softly, "I am Ace's eldest brother, Cheng Cheng." Jinbei's eyes widened, he stopped struggling, and sighed. "Mr. Ace said you were strong, but I didn't expect you to have such terrifying strength. If you were here, I wouldn't worry about the war. Mr. Ace was secretly transferred a week ago. I don't know where he went." Cheng Cheng walked up to Jinbei, and just when he was about to swing his sword to unchain Jinbei, a familiar voice came from his mind. "Congratulations to the uncle for completing the mission. Close black lens bracket. Reward. Great Dark Sky 7 killing sword formation, close black lens bracket." As soon as he finished speaking, a blank light flashed on Cheng Cheng's palm, and 7 small black swords appeared, floating quietly in the air. There is no scabbard, and the devil patterns carved on the sword body are extremely delicate and dense. Each small sword is about the same length, only the size of an ordinary dagger, and the sword body is thin, but the devil patterns carved on it are slightly different. Some have fierce gazes on the front fangs, while others are carved with demons and monsters showing their teeth and claws, as if they are about to fly out of the sword body, which is lifelike. If viewed side by side, it looks like a picture of 100 ghosts walking at night. How murderous! Cheng Cheng was slightly shocked and at the same time looked at the 7 small black swords with admiration. If this set of sword formations were given to Tuanzi, I am afraid that Tuanzi would be able to fight against a truly powerful person. Then he put away the sword formation full of killing intent and put it into the space ring. It seems that I have to pick up Tuanzi after leaving and then send her to a quiet place, otherwise with her character, I am afraid she will cause chaos in the war on the top. After Cheng Cheng came back, he waved his arm, and with a flash of sword light, Jinbei's chain was broken. Then he handed Jinbei a fairy bean to eat. Haishia Jinbei ate the fairy beans without hesitation. The bloody wounds on his body were recovering at a speed visible to the naked eye. He hesitated and asked, "How to sign a contract? Since you saved me, my life is yours." Cheng Cheng smiled and shook his head gently. "No need, we will go out together in a while. After we go out, you will be free and can do whatever you want." Advertisement, At first they thought it was just a simple prison robbery, but now they realized that it was this pirate who was massacring this prison, which is known as the best in the world. However, Jinbei, one of the Shichibukai, who had spoken so rudely just now, was not killed by Cheng Cheng with a sword. Instead, he did not even need to sign the contract. The more Kid thought about it, the more unbalanced he felt and his eyes became gloomier. Cheng Cheng said calmly, "Try to block the advance of the marine battleship. My work here is basically completed. Let's retreat now." Kid stared at another empty chain position, where Fire Fist Ace was originally imprisoned. Is it just because of him? Alas, Luffy has a big brother like Cheng Cheng to protect him, so what does he have? The sea breeze blew, and the white cloak on her body rustled, and her eyes were blurred, exuding endless charm. At this time, Kira patted him on the shoulder and said softly, "Don't worry, I have a hunch that we are on the right path." They are both pirates. Why is the difference so big? The 7 large marine battleships that came to support were swaying and firing cannonballs at the Black Justice, but most of the cannonballs were blocked by Godzilla and King Kong and exploded directly in the air. On the bow of a battleship at the front of the marine battleship, the general stood proudly. As long as a cannonball came within 1,000 meters of her, the famous sword Kimpira in her hand would create a sword energy and cut off the cannon. What kind of pirate group did they join? "Leave it to us," Luo said in a deep voice on the other side of the phone. They leaned on each other and crowded together, looking around in panic. They never imagined that the world's largest prison would be completely destroyed. If you can't escape this, it can only be said that you are too stupid and not suitable for the pirate profession. Cheng Cheng asked, "What is the current casualty situation?" "The most important thing is that their pirate group massacred Impel Down City and only one person died?" Advertisement. Cheng Cheng didn't bother to pay attention to their thoughts. He said hello and everyone took the elevator to leave. As for the other pirates on the upper floors, whether they could escape or not depended on their lives. Later, as time passed, he didn't bother to talk about it anymore. He just buried the matter deeply in his heart and kept it unknown to outsiders. Advance above the sea. There was ruins on the sea. A sea of fire filled the sky with black smoke, and the bodies of jailers were everywhere. Some of them were women who were civil servants advancing into the city and had no fighting ability. The watch phone bug continued. Ama no Shiryu killed one person from the 2nd Division in a sneak attack, and the other 5 or 6 were seriously injured, with no life-threatening injuries. Even a fool knows that once a contract is signed, there will be no freedom from now on, and even his own life will be in Cheng Cheng's hands. Luffy, Ace, and Cheng Cheng didn't expect that they were 3 brothers. Master Cheng Cheng, we have wiped out all the jailers on the sea, but the support fleet from the Marine headquarters is already 10 kilometers away. Do we want to continue the war? Whoever laughed at him, Kid would fight back without hesitation and beat those people half to death. Kid and Kira looked at each other. In their impression, Cheng Cheng had always been an extremely domineering and tyrannical being, and signing a contract with them was a forced order. Seeing with their own eyes one wave after another of criminals in prison uniforms escaping in front of them, they had never dared to think about such a scene before. That day he met Straw Hat Luffy in the Sabo Islands. Luffy also said loudly that he wanted to become One Piece without hesitation. However, Luffy was not angry when faced with the ridicule of others. Instead, he smiled more than those people. Loud. Then when these former great pirates arrive on the ship, will they be the weakest group? The other big pirates who still wanted to watch the show were surprised, and some of them knew the sea hero Jinbei. On the Black Justice, the surrounding artillery fire was fully opened, and it launched a frantic attack on the battleship 10 kilometers away. Although the damage to the Marine was very limited, it was feared that after the shell exploded, the waves stirred up could block the progress of the Marine battleship. There was a hint of helplessness in Kid's eyes. He had also determined to be One Piece since he was a child and to find the legendary secret treasure. However, every time he mentioned this matter to others, he was met with wanton ridicule. After the other criminals heard this, their blood boiled all over and they were full of shock. At this moment, the watch phone on Cheng Cheng's wrist suddenly made a buzzing sound. After the call was connected, there was a rapid sound. Chapter 205. 2 women fighting. Originally, after receiving the call for help from Impel Down at the Marine headquarters, they were not prepared to go out for rescue. At this critical time point, most of the Marine forces have not yet been deployed, and some Shichibukai are also on their way. If Marine intermediate forces are sent to support Impel Down at this time, the headquarters Marinefondo will inevitably be empty. If this is a plot to lure the tiger away from the mountain, the entire Marine headquarters may be attacked by those with white beard and red hair. Even if there is a 1/3 chance, they can't afford to gamble. Impel Down, the world's largest prison, can be abandoned, but Marine headquarters Marinefondo must ensure absolute safety. The 5 elders have given a death order. Ace must die, and he must not compromise with those pirates. Momoshiki Gion sneered, and a touch of determination flashed across his face as white as jade. For an ace, it completely angered Whitebeard and the big pirates, and even the Black Justice pirates directly attacked Impel Down City in order to demonstrate. Now she can no longer contact anyone in Impel Down City. Even if she thinks with her thighs, she knows that Impel Down City has fallen and the big pirates imprisoned there will inevitably be released. Alas, is such behavior really worth it? The Marine headquarters, which originally had no intention of going to the rescue, finally decided to send out symbolic reinforcements, at least to save face. Therefore, except for her, the Marine general who acts as a facade, the leader on the other 6 ships is only Marine Colonel. She looks menacing, but in fact she is the only one who can actually fight. Especially before she set off, Warring States also meaningfully explained that this time she would go out in a prudent manner and must not be impulsive. Haha, Warring States period has made it very clear. But Gion is not willing to just do this for show. This is her first battle, and she must try her best, otherwise she will die. Although she, Gion, is a PR street asterisk you'd, why is she afraid of death? Advertisement. Zhejiang Warring States, who are you looking down on? That day, above the Nikayan rooftop, feeling the extremely strong sword intent on the balcony, she decided to ask Cheng Cheng, the leader of the Black Justice pirates, just how powerful he was. Gion tapped his feet lightly, rose into the air, drew out the extremely long famous sword Kinpira, slashed out several sword energy, chopped all the cannonballs that hit it, and shouted angrily. All battleships obey the order and move forward at full speed. The Black Justice pirates are just ahead. They have already endured a big battle in Impel Down City and must be seriously injured now. Our opportunity has come. As long as you catch any one of them, you will be famous throughout the Marine. The bounty for any one of them is hundreds of millions, and the opportunity to make a fortune is right in front of you. Marine, who was originally sluggish and without any fighting spirit, immediately felt like he was on fire after seeing how domineering his Marine general was. He shouted at the Black Justice pirates ahead with red eyes. The 7 warships accelerated instantly, riding the wind and waves, and drew 7 traces on the sea. Who is Cheng Cheng, who dares to come out and fight with a woman like me? Marine General Momoshiki Gion was flying alone in the air at the front. At the same time, he held the famous sword Kinpira tightly with both hands. The golden light on the blade rose sharply. He waved it forward forcefully and shouted softly. Wu Ding Shen Slash. A golden sword energy that is hundreds of meters long cuts through the sea surface at an extremely fast speed, emitting bursts of sonic explosions that tear the air. The extremely fierce killing momentum also carries a sacred aura, which makes people feel excited when they see it from a distance. Born in awe, unable to arouse the desire to resist. The golden sword energy suddenly split into 3 sword auras 1,000 meters away from the Black Justice, forming a triangle and slashing at the Black Justice in 3 different directions. Everyone on the Black Justice did not dare to look down upon such a level of sword attack. If the female general really slashed the Black Justice with a sword, it would really be a big joke. Several people on the boat were dispatched instantly. Thanos General Kosha jumped up high, blocking his arms in front of his chest to resist the golden sword energy at the moment of contact. With a bang, the golden sword energy hit Kusha's arms. Kusha fell heavily, and a big hole was made on the deck. General Thanos was fine. He patted his butt and stood up again. There was a little scratch on his arm. There was no trace of blood. He looked at the extremely coquettish female marine general in the distance and murmured, "This girl is not a good person, she is too harsh." Advertisement. The people on the boat were all stunned to see that they could just carry it down with their bodies, and it didn't seem to hurt or itch, and even a little blood could be seen. As for the remaining 2 golden sword lights, one was penetrated by 3 black spears shot at the same time, and the other was scattered by a punch of the hill like King Kong. The Empress on the side had a look of resentment in her eyes. Even if she had used the sword energy just now, she would have been in a lot of trouble, but this man resisted it so easily. He was worthy of being a subordinate of her husband. Then she looked at Gion flying past in the distance. This female general was undoubtedly the biggest threat to her. This woman's breasts looked much bigger than hers. Her eyes were cold and she said angrily, "How dare you chop up my husband's pirate ship? Would it be ******* ch looking for death?" The Empress immediately stood up from the ground and flew forward. Momoshiki Gion looked at the passing Empress with some surprise and asked, "Hancock, why did you appear in the Black Justice Pirates? Do you have to give up your identity as 7 warlords of the sea?" The angry Empress suddenly changed her face, her cheeks flushed, and she secretly glanced at her. Her whole person became charming, exuding endless charm, making anyone who saw her couldn't help but fall in love with her. The Empress, who has always been a man-to-man, is very confident. No matter how upright the other woman is, she can bend her. No one in the world can refuse her charm. The Empress seized the opportunity, put her hands in front of her to show a heart, and said sweetly, "Sweet, sweet wind." Rays of love rays shot out, enveloping Momoshiki Gion. As long as the General Momoshiki has the slightest move, he will be instantly petrified and lose the power to resist. Grandmaster Momoshiki looked at the Empress's moving face, his eyes blurred, and he was suddenly shocked. With all the skills of a geisha, she often seduced guests to achieve her goal, and lured those pirates to surrender themselves into the trap. She was very familiar with these methods, and she had already known the Empress's abilities. She gritted her teeth suddenly, and grabbed the famous sword Jinbaluo with her right hand. The strong pain made her wake up. The Empress snorted coldly, and she actually saw through it, but she also understood that the other party was a marine general after all, and could not be petrified so easily. If her sweet sweet wind is used on someone inadvertently, the probability of success is almost 100%. Now that they are enemies, it is really not easy to successfully petrify each other. Momoshiki Gion shouted sharply, "Hancock, from now on, your daughter's island will no longer be protected by marine. The agreement between you and the world government is invalid from today on." Chapter 206 Dharma Appearance. Now I don't care about anything anymore. If you want to start a war, just come. Empress Hancock moved her lips slightly, spit out a small heart, used her fingers as a gun, aimed at Momoshiki Gion, and said coldly, "Kiss gun." The pink love is like a bullet, flying quickly, cutting through the air and leaving circles of surging ripples. General Momoshiki said disdainfully, "Boring." She clenched the famous sword Jinbaluo with both hands, slashed out with one strike, and fired out a sharp golden sword energy, which instantly chopped the pink love bullet into pieces. The sword energy roared towards the Empress. The Empress' face changed drastically. Once her charm failed to work, the other party would be a real general and would indeed cause great harm to her. She hurriedly turned sideways, and the extremely domineering golden sword energy was close to her body and she was able to avoid it. She was not injured, but a few hairs were cut off. The golden sword energy slashed into the sea, and there was a violent explosion sound, and the water exploded. Admiral Momoshiki looked at the people on the Black Justice in front and found that Cheng Cheng was not there. He shouted loudly, "Captain Cheng Cheng, if you don't come out, don't blame me for slashing your ship with my sword." In the ears of the Empress, this was undoubtedly the biggest provocation, to actually flirt with her husband so openly and openly in front of her. There was a trace of murderous intent in her eyes. "Anyone who dares to provoke my man, no matter who you are as Marine General, go and die." Hancock gently touched his lips with his fingers, transforming into a huge pink heart, and then pulled it back like a bow and arrow, and shouted softly, "Captive arrow." In an instant, countless pink arrows burst out from the pink heart, shooting towards General Momoshiki like a violent storm. This move is different from Tianshan Gangfeng. No matter whether the opponent is attracted to the Empress or not, as long as he is hit by the pink arrow, he will be petrified. Once petrified, only she can dissolve it, otherwise the other person will only be a stone sculpture forever. General Momoshiki dodges quickly. There are detailed records of Hancock's abilities in Marine's secret files. Faced with such a move, even she can only choose to dodge. After arriving hundreds of meters away in the blink of an eye, General Momoshiki held a knife in front of her with both hands. The blade was only 1 centimeter away from the tip of her nose. Then she closed her eyes, and a sacred and powerful aura emanated from her body. The white cloak behind Momoshiki fluttered and fluttered wantonly, and his lips moved slightly as he muttered silently. Advertisement. In the name of a great general, I save suffering in the world. Among all god tiers, I am unique and unique. I transform my body in various ways and save all living beings from suffering. Every time she uttered a word, a circle of golden ripples would appear behind her back. At the same time, a majestic Dharma appeared behind her, with her eyes closed and focused, emitting golden light, and standing 100 meters tall. The golden light Dharma steps on the sea, holding a bow and arrow in his left hand, and a sword in his right hand. The style of the sword is exactly the same as the one in Momosagi's hand, but the length is dozens of times longer than hers. Suddenly everyone on the Black Justice looked over, and they were all shocked. The huge golden shadow on the sea did not know what kind of god it was, and it was much taller than Godzilla and King Kong. It was so majestic that for a while, people couldn't resist. The Empress ignored him and aimed the captive's arrow at General Momosagi again, shooting a burst of pink love arrows. Her chest was rising and falling violently, just like the waves of the sea below, but she still didn't open her eyes. The Empress cursed angrily, and instantly appeared on the deck of the Black Justice, shouting, "Get out of my way, my husband's ship must be protected by me." Hundreds of phantoms of golden swords continued to strike at the Black Justice like a mountain bearing down on top. Standing on both sides of the Black Justice, Godzilla Tori and King Kong Haruwa were like hills. They had been seriously injured after the battle just now. Even if it means death, so what? The golden sword tore through the air. Before the sword arrived, everyone on the boat felt a huge sense of oppression. The air seemed to be sucked away under huge pressure, making it difficult for everyone to breathe. How could other people really let the Empress deal with it alone? If everyone didn't stop this sword that tore the world apart, once the entire ship was split apart, they, the devil fruit users, would be in great danger on the sea. Passive. Boom. She also noticed something strange about General Momosagi. He was sweating profusely, obviously struggling to hold on. The golden sword light dissipated, and all of Kosha and the others fell heavily on the deck, and they were all seriously injured. The only one who is not afraid of water, Godzilla, is still knocked out of his true form at this moment. But the majestic golden statue behind her raised its head slightly, and two arms grew from behind, with a hammer in its left hand and a mace in its right hand. Vajra Hulua and Godzilla totally flew out upside down and smashed into the sea. Their bodies quickly shrunk into the form of ordinary people. The Empress looked crazy, and she rose into the air again, raised her foot and kicked General Momosagi, shouting, "Big fragrant kick." Advertisement: the 100-meter-long golden giant sword fell heavily. The Empress flew out, and her white jade arms were instantly wrapped with arm-domineering energy, turning extremely dark. He shot the sword as an arrow. General Momosagi still looked calm, with a peaceful and compassionate look on his face, and his closed eyes still showed no intention of opening. But now, regardless of the fatigue and pain in his body, he took action boldly and attacked directly towards the phantom that was taller than them. The hull of the ship sank halfway in an instant, the sea shook and the waves rolled. In this case, let's see who can handle it better. Only this time, Momosagi did not dodge, but looked at the Empress with pity. The solemn Dharma minister behind her swung his sword with his right hand, causing ripples and circles, and all the pink love arrows dissipated. Boom! King Kong's huge fist like a meteorite collided with the sledgehammer, and Godzilla's tail collided with the giant mace. The phantom figure behind Momosagi glanced down at the Empress with a compassionate look, leaning on the bow with a long sword in his right hand, drawing the bow like a full moon. The Empress, who was the first to take action and bear most of the force, saw blood flowing out of her arms, and a very deep blood mark appeared. The blood flowed down her arms and dripped from her fingers onto the deck. The golden sword turned into a bolt of lightning and penetrated the Empress' body instantly. Dealing with King Kong and Godzilla on the left and right at the same time is like a god coming to the world, slaying demons and defending the road to eradicate monsters. As long as this kick can hit Momosagi, no matter whether she is tempted or not, she will be petrified by his own ability. Hancock spit out a mouthful of blood and fell into the sea. The sea shook, the waves roared into the sky, and there were waves of roars. But the golden giant sword that slashed towards the Black Justice still did not linger at all. Instead, the golden light surged, and the momentum became more brilliant. General Momosagi was completely soaked with sweat, and sweat dripped down his face. Godzilla's tail swung like a powerful whip, lashing out at General Momosagi. Vajra Haruwa jumped high from the ruins of the Impel City, carrying a fist with a huge and domineering aura, and broke open the air suddenly rushed through. The Earth Demon Bear Kabasi, the Thanos General Kosha, the yellow-robed man Lao Sha, and all the crew members who still had the strength to take action all came forward to greet them. Sengoku and Kizaru both said that this time we should focus on being prudent and just let me show off, but I can't do it in Gion. Chapter 207. Awakening. All the crew members of the Black Justice suddenly felt nervous. It was over. When the Empress first arrived on the ship, she declared that Cheng Cheng was her husband, and she brought the captain's brother Luffy with her. Luffy kept calling the Empress sister-in-law. Luffy was injured in the battle with Impel Down City's jailer and passed out. Although his life was not in danger at this moment, he was still in a state of embarrassment and seriously injured. Now the Empress, one of the Shichibukai, has been pierced through the body by a sword again. If she dies, the Imperial Master will definitely be furious. Shuya looked anxious, but her blue-eyed spirit fox was of no use in the battle, so she hurriedly said, "Kosa, Kabasi, go and save the Empress, she must not die." Thanos General Kosa and Earth Demon Bear Kabasi were all in trouble. The place where the Empress fell was at least 300 meters away. They were children who grew up in the desert and could not swim at all. What's more, they are all devil fruit users now, and they will become even more powerless when touching the seawater. Luo, The only one who can save people by moving through space, is currently rescuing Toli and Hulua. They were knocked out of their original form and struggled hard in the sea. How to do. The Empress must not die like this. Shuya, who was extremely anxious, suddenly had a flash of inspiration and shouted heartbreakingly to the sky. Somersault Cloud, come and save people. However, the Somersault Cloud, thousands of miles away, was looking at the sea with Zeus, and no sound was heard. Little did Shuya know that the relationship between Cheng Cheng and Somersault Cloud was telepathy, and they didn't care how loud they shouted. Every time Cheng Cheng shouted out to summon Somersault Clouds, it was just a case of Chuyunibyo. Shuya fell slumped to the ground. The sky around her was quiet, and the Somersault Clouds did not fly over. Just when the Empress' body was only 1 meter away from the sea. Suddenly, a golden light burst out from the ruins of the impelling city, touching the water surface and leaving a mark on the water surface. He flew towards the Empress, grabbed her slender waist, and held her in his arms. The Empress, whose face was extremely pale, her eyes blurred, felt the solid muscles on Cheng Cheng's arms, and sighed. I will die without regrets. Cheng Cheng tapped the Empress' forehead lightly and said with a smile, it's really not that easy to die after you become my woman. The Empress became even more weak, her delicate body was like water, and she hugged Cheng Cheng's neck tightly. After Cheng Cheng picked up the Empress, he flew back to the Black Justice. He first stuffed a fairy bean into Hancock's mouth and then said, do you want to take revenge yourself, or should I help you? The Empress smiled miserably. The wounds on her body were no longer bleeding, but her face was still pale. She said aggrievedly, I can't beat her. Advertisement Cheng Cheng stood up and looked calmly at the huge phantom Dharma body in the sky in the distance. He didn't know which god Dharma body it was. No wonder few people have seen Momosagi Gion take action. This is simply shocking. Everyone who has seen her take action must be dead. The golden light on the back of Cheng Cheng's hand flashed, and he placed his finger on the Empress's eyebrows. He lowered his head and muttered silently. With my order, wake up. The Empress also had a golden line on the back of her hand floating towards the center of her eyebrows. Suddenly, Hancock's eyes were filled with brilliant golden light, which was purer and more holy than the golden light emitted by the phantom. It was unusually quiet in my ears. I couldn't hear the rolling waves or the roaring sea breeze. There was only silence. My whole body began to get hot, and the surface of my skin turned an abnormal red color. Are you going to die? It seems that I was fatally injured just now after a sword penetrated my body. Even my husband, the powerful fifth emperor, cannot save me. At this moment, Hancock had no anger towards General Momosagi, but only some regrets. Why am I so weak? I really want to stay with my husband for a while. The Empress murmured. Husband, please remember to take care of yourself in the future. I leave my 2 sisters and daughter island to you. Cheng Cheng smiled bitterly and shook his head. I have said that it is very difficult to die after becoming my woman. General Momosagi in the distance did not give Cheng Cheng and the others any time to breathe. After seeing the golden light rescuing the Empress, they immediately recognized this person as Cheng Cheng. Cheng Cheng, you shy little turtle finally dares to come out. Momosagi shouted loudly, and the phantom shadow behind him slashed down with another sword. At this moment, the big pirates who were pushing forward to the bottom of the city walked to the ground and saw the light of day again. After they came out, these vicious pirates, were stunned by the hundreds of meters high divine image and the magnificent golden giant sword. Have the battles in the outside world become this advanced over the years? Cheng Cheng shouted angrily, Bullet! Bullet looked up to the sky and laughed wildly, but he had no time to transform. The ground beneath his feet shattered and his body was ejected like a cannonball. His arms were wrapped in armed domineering, black lightning wrapped around his fists, and he punched out. The 100-meter-long golden giant sword trembled, and golden cracks appeared on the blade. Advertisement boom. The sword broke into pieces and turned into countless golden fragments, dissipating in the air. General Momosagi's heart was shocked. What a domineering aura, Bullet. The more she thought about this name, the more familiar it became, and suddenly she thought of the crew member of the Roger Pirates who was known as the Devil's Descendant. He was a great pirate who was determined to surpass Roger. But after Roger died, Bullet, who had lost his goal, began to go berserk, turning the entire sea upside down. In the end, Marine launched a Buster Call, and Sengoku and Garp attacked together, and Bullet, who was only 22 years old at the time, was imprisoned and impelled down. Cheng Cheng, the devil, actually released the real devil. It seems that this world is going to be completely chaotic again. The Empress, who closed her eyes and waited for death, suddenly felt that her body had returned to normal, even her injuries were completely healed, and she had a strange power, as if something in her body had awakened. His body exuded an unprecedentedly powerful aura. The other crew members looked at the Empress in shock. What on earth was this powerful aura? What is the awakening that Cheng Cheng just mentioned? Cheng Cheng smiled and helped the Empress up and said, Feel it, how is your body now? Even the Empress herself couldn't describe this strange feeling. She just felt that everything around her was under control, which was wonderful. She walked slowly to the edge of the deck. The waves were rolling below, and the water kept lapping against the hull of the ship, making bursts of noise. With a thought, the Empress mobilized all the devil fruit power in her body. The rolling sea surface below suddenly stopped. Within a radius of tens of meters, the waves were all still, and the originally blue water turned into gray-white stones in an instant. The entire hull stopped shaking and stood still on the rocks. The sea under the ship seemed to have a small island out of thin air. Everyone was shocked and looked at the stone sea around them with dumbfounded eyes. I have long heard that the Empress, one of the Shichibukai, can petrify others, and once she is attracted to her, she will be turned into a stone sculpture. But why can seawater be petrified? Falling on the deck, Bullet looked at the Empress in surprise and exclaimed. I just came out and witnessed the awakening of a devil fruit ability. This woman is really amazing. Hancock looked at Cheng Cheng in surprise. What on earth happened? Cheng Cheng chuckled. This is the awakening of your ability, another advanced state of devil fruit. You can slowly understand the secrets yourself. Chapter 208. What are the rules? On the sea surface, there is a phantom of a god with a height of several hundred meters, holding a weapon with a majestic aura, waving his limbs and arms at the same time, slashing wildly at Bullet. General Momosagi's breath became more and more confused, his face turned pale, and his black hair flew behind him. He still closed his eyes tightly and refused to open them. The prison uniform on Bullet's upper body was all shattered. The more he fought, the braver and more excited he became, venting all the regrets from the time travel just now. Every time he swings his fist, one of the weapons of the Dharma will be smashed, and at the same time, Momosagi Gion will spurt out a mouthful of blood. The Empress stood up and regained her invincible and domineering aura that ruled the world. Her body turned into a breeze, and she rode the waves on the sea with her toes. Whenever the Empress's toes haven't touched the seawater will turn into gray-white stone in advance. As the figure of the Empress passed by, a small stone appeared every 20 meters on the sea surface, causing the Empress to seem to be running on land. Almost in the blink of an eye, the Empress rushed within 100 meters of General Momosagi, gave a light drink, activated all her devil fruit abilities, and a pink light burst out from her body and shot in all directions. The entire sea water appears pink. As long as the part illuminated by the light turned into stone, the sea surface with a radius of 100 meters stood still for an instant and turned into gray-white stone. The nearest Bullet looked shocked, opened his mouth wide, and instantly petrified into a stone sculpture. Momosagi Gion, who was a little further away, had her left arm petrified, and within a second, the rest of her body would also be petrified. Momosagi was forced to open his eyes, and the shadow of the gods behind him also dissipated. Looking at the half-dead Empress with a look of shock, she really couldn't understand that now the Empress was not only recovered, but she had even awakened her devil fruit ability. No, this ability is too terrifying. It can actually change the physical form of seawater into stone. In this way, wouldn't the Black Justice pirates always have a geographical advantage in future wars? The Empress must die. Momosagi gritted his teeth, and while he could still move his right arm, he wanted to kill the Empress with a golden sword light with all his strength. Advertisement. But at this moment, an khaki-colored figure suddenly flashed across the scene very quickly, hugged Momosagi's shoulders, and held her in his arms, without even the slightest pause in the middle. Bullet nodded. Are there any military uniforms? I still prefer to wear military uniforms. A fat man wearing a prison uniform and a fleshy face stepped forward, patted Shuya's round butt lightly and said jokingly. Cheng Cheng looked at the 7 marine warships going away and didn't bother to chase them. He ordered the ships to move forward and away from the Impel City. Do you think we can really win this war? Even if Kaido is on the red-haired side, it will be difficult for us Marines to deal with the Black Justice pirates alone, right? The members of the original Heart Pirates of the 3rd Division have been rescued by Luo, but 38 of them were originally captured. By now, more than half of them have been tortured to death and impelled down. With Luo as the captain, in the 3rd episode, there were only 9 people left. The pirates in prison uniforms held their breath for a moment, and everyone was in danger. The 10 people in the 4th Division were still wearing black and white prison uniforms, which looked out of place with the others in black suits. Do you know that the Empress has awakened her devil fruit ability? If we don't kill her, the threat will be too great. The Empress snorted coldly, looked at him with her nostrils, and said with disdain, I have the ability to change the world. What's more, there is Whitebeard, who is known as the strongest man in the world. Although everyone says that he is old and sick, no one has shaken that man's status as the strongest man. Little beauty, look how big I am. Momosagi Gion looked down at his petrified left arm. Even if it turned into stone, that slender arm still looked like the most perfect artistic stone sculpture, enough to put most women in the world to shame. Shuya smiled lightly and said, of course, captains have the right to choose to wear clothes, as long as they are black. With the addition of the newly recruited 18 members of the 4th Division headed by Bullet, the originally small ship immediately became crowded. After the khaki figure landed on the battleship with Momosagi in his arms, he reluctantly put Momosagi down, his eyes full of love and distress. Faintly becoming the steward of the ship, she walked to the warehouse on the 1st floor and worked hard for a while. She was sweating and holding a large bag of brand new suits in front of everyone in Bullet, she said softly. Momosagi said angrily, T-Pig, why are you here again? Didn't I say I wouldn't let you come this time? Advertisement. Momosagi's body was weak and he fell down on the chair. Even sitting, he was still much taller than the T-Pig with juice. He sighed heavily. Whitebeard, Red Hair, and Sabo should all be on their way now. Once everyone arrives, they can immediately break into the Marine headquarters and turn Marineford upside down. Momosagi looked at the Black Justice pirates in the distance with cold eyes. I don't care. The short stature, with its head only reaching Momosagi's waist, was filled with regret. Looking at Momosagi, whose left arm was completely petrified, he said. We are partners now. These are your clothes. Put them on and try to see if they fit. If you can't put them on, tell me how they fit. Just remember your clothes numbers and come directly to me to pick up the clothes in the future. Just give your number. A gust of breeze blew by, reminding the fat pirate to disappear into ashes. At the same time, the other pursuing warships also turned their bows and prepared to return. Now that my left arm has been petrified and has become half a useless person, I am afraid it will not be of any use in the next war. Now that the Empress has awakened her abilities, we cannot kill her easily. She has many people and powerful forces. Even Bullet was petrified by the Empress. If we don't save you, you will also turn into stone. Chado Jaji comforted him. It won't affect you, it won't affect you. The world doesn't know how powerful you are yet. When the time comes, Whitebeard will be left to me, don't worry. Shuya has a special status on the ship. In addition to serving as a navigator with Peebo, she is also responsible for other chores on the ship. The Black Justice suddenly became crowded with more people. Bullet, who turned into stone, has been restored by the Empress. He looked at the Empress and praised, what a domineering ability. If you use your ability well, you can change the world. Cheng Cheng was too lazy to say anything more. The golden light floated on the back of his hand. The expression of the big pirate who was moving his hands and feet suddenly froze. His body remained still in the air and turned into stone gray. Shuya was immediately frightened and took 3 steps back. Her expression changed drastically. Chado Jaji wanted to stop it, but it was too late. He said helplessly, what are you doing? If you ask the doctor to help treat it, you might still have a chance to recover. She slowly touched the cold stone with her right hand, then suddenly grabbed it with her fingers. The entire left arm that turned into stone shattered, and the stone residue fell on the deck. I'm not worried about you. Although Warring States said that you won't be impulsive, I know that with your temper you will never give up, so I came here secretly. Chapter 209 Folding Willows and Weaving Garlands. Bullet frowned slightly. The fat man who died was actually not weak. Moreover, he was now considered a member of his team. Although there was no relationship, how could he kill him so easily? Even for Cheng Cheng, he can be considered a qualified thug, right? Can this be considered a bad thing? In his opinion, isn't this just a normal greeting? Cheng Cheng saw the doubts in the hearts of these so-called big pirates and said coldly, I've said it before, I only say my rules once. If you don't understand, I can only let you die. To be honest, I really don't care about the combat capabilities of you trash. Any one of my crew members has greater potential than you. After the other team members saw the fat man turned into ashes, they also had suspicions in their hearts. Knowing that Cheng Cheng had used the power of the contract, they looked at Cheng Cheng with more respect. After all, he had just escaped from a hellish prison and died inexplicably before enjoying a good life. It would be too frustrating. The remaining 17 people immediately put away their arrogance and became docile, trying their best to smile silly to make themselves look harmless. The next day, the news that Impel Down City was destroyed and all the criminals in the prison were released shocked the world. The Black Justice Pirates once again let the world know their powerful strength, and the throne of the 5th Emperor is even more undisputed. The world is in turmoil and rain is about to come. The Moby D** K of the New World Whitebeard Pirates, and its 43 pirate groups, are crossing the Red Continent and heading towards the Marine Headquarters, Marine Fando. The red-haired pirates dispatched at the same time, summoning all cadres to return, and their destination was also Marinefando. At the Revolutionary Army base, Chief of General Staff Sabo summoned 5,000 elite members of the Eastern Army of the Revolutionary Army. Together with the Eastern Army's Deputy Commander Ahiru and the acting Fishman Karate Master Kurla, they set out for Marine Headquarters Marine Fando. For a time, the whole world fell into chaos. Marine Headquarters Marinefando, everyone is on alert. On a row of warships docked on the coast, ammunition and artillery have been filled. Everyone has a serious expression, and a chilling atmosphere can be felt from a long distance away. Advertisement in Marine Vendor Square. Every Marine stopped smiling. Everyone who used to joke with each other showed a look of death. Most of the Marines had already sent all their property to their families far away. Those whose families and relatives were at the Marine Headquarters found an excuse to send their wives and children to travel to the East China Sea to relax. No Marine has confidence in the upcoming war, but no one dares to say so. After a while, Garp had a wreath of willow branches on his head, with pink begonias, red camellias, and several bougainvilleas on it. Garp was stunned for a moment, and then he remembered that Tuanzi only practiced swordsmanship all day long and didn't care about the outside world, let alone the news that Ace had been captured and that a war was about to begin. Garp turned his eyes, and after seeing the dumplings drinking on the stone table in front of him, there was a hint of kindness from the past in his eyes. Garp was lying on a bamboo and rattan rocking chair, his old eyes staring at the tallest building in the distance. There was a separate tower protruding from the tall building, and Ace was imprisoned inside. Master Garp, why don't I leave now and stay with you for 2 more days? I will leave when you are in a better mood. I have to leave now. Master knows that he must call me a white-eyed wolf. Thinking of this, Garp couldn't help but sigh. Who would have thought that Cheng Cheng had predicted this war that was about to change the world's structure half a year ago? Perhaps, even earlier. Master, why don't you go to work recently? And you don't look good. Is there anything bothering you recently? So he just did it. Tuanzi rolled up his sleeves, jumped up and broke 2 willow branches, and started working with his hands. For some reason, in the past, he would fall asleep in less than a minute as long as his back was next to this wicker chair. Now, he has been lying there all morning, and he is still not sleepy at all. Tuanzi smiled and suddenly saw the lush flowers and willow branches in the yard. He thought about making a wreath with his own hands and giving it to his master. Maybe his mood would improve. It has been 3 days since he attended the Marine meeting. How could he really seriously consider such a troublesome problem, and then let Cheng Cheng deal with it perfunctorily? Garp's small courtyard is unusually quiet, which seems a bit out of place with the tense atmosphere outside. Garp, who is full of worries, has no intention of drinking. For a strong man of his level, he can drink no matter how much he drinks without getting dizzy. Tuanzi was carrying large and small bags in front of him, which were full of good wine. His face was rosy. Because he was happy today, he opened a bottle of good wine before noon to celebrate. Advertisement. Garp forced a smile, put a big hand directly on Tuanzi's head, and said with a smile. How come? Tuanzi is the best behaved. After you leave, I will call your master and praise you. When the time comes in 3 days, Ace will be escorted to the execution platform in Marineland Square, where you will receive justice. It is more than words. Even seeing the word justice these days gave him a headache. Garp said resentfully. Xiao Tuanzi, when you get to your master's place, don't forget how kind he is to you. In the future, when you have nothing to do, you must come back to visit your master often. When Cheng Cheng left Marine, he asked him, if Ace was caught and beheaded by Marine in the future, would he, as a grandfather, save him or not? Maybe he made the right choice by leaving Marine. Is justice without family affection really justice? Garp's old face, which had been gloomy for several days, instantly turned into a bright chrysanthemum. Garp didn't know, and he didn't want to think about it. There will be chaos at the Marine headquarters soon. The top priority is to send Xiao Tuanzi away first. Once someone at Marine knows about the relationship between Tuanzi and Cheng Cheng, it may be a little troublesome to leave. He thought for a while and then said, they are all messy and annoying things. You don't need to know. The boat has been arranged for you. When you see the master in the afternoon, just tell him. As for those young middle-level generals, they are more confident than those ordinary Marines, and they dream of showing off their skills in the next war and becoming famous all over the world. Xiao Tuanzi looked at Master Garp's frowning face, but he hesitated in his heart. He ran forward and took Garp's arm with both hands and said. But now things were exactly as Cheng Cheng said, and he couldn't help but think about this issue. Is it justice or family affection? Tuanzi's drinking ability has been getting better and better recently. He drank half a bottle of wine and still looked calm. He gently pushed the half bottle of wine in his hand to Garp and said. After hesitating for a moment, Garp added. Forget it, it's okay if you don't come. Next time I see you, I guess you are also a little pirate. But if someone bullies you outside, you will reveal the name of Master. Scare them to death. What kind of monster is my grandson? Chapter 210 Attacking Tuanzi. There was a slow sound of footsteps outside the door, and Tuanzi turned his head to look over warily. Creak. With a soft sound, the wooden door slowly opened, revealing a handsome boy with short hair, who looked to be 1 or 2 years older than Tuanzi. After Alex saw the dumplings in the courtyard, he stepped into the courtyard with a smile on his face. Tuanzi said helplessly. Why are you here again? You have lost to me so many times. You are too weak to beat me. Besides, I am leaving here soon and I don't have time to waste time with you. The #1 genius in the youth camp smiled and walked in with a bamboo sword on his back. He first bowed respectfully to Garp, who was lying on a wicker chair, and then said to Tuanzi with a smile. Tuanzi, I'm not here to compete with you today. I'm leaving tomorrow to say goodbye to you. When we meet next time, I will definitely surpass you. With that said, Alex took off the bamboo sword from his back and handed it to Tuanzi with both hands. This bamboo sword is a treasure that has been with me since I was 4 years old. You are leaving today, so it is just a good parting gift. Give it to you. You think I need your broken bamboo sword? Tuanzi pointed at the 3 long swords hanging across his waist and said disdainfully, not bothering to reach out to catch them, and asked, why do you want to be a great genius? Why don't you continue to show off your power in your youth camp and leave there? People call you a genius. Alex was not angry either. He smiled and put the bamboo sword on the stone table in front of him and explained. I'm not the only one who has to leave. There's not going to be a war soon. The entire youth camp will be temporarily moved to Holy Land Mary, Hoya. In the words of Fleet Admiral, once the Marine headquarters is annihilated by the entire army, these people in our youth camp will be the fire of the future Marine, allowing justice to continue endlessly. Tuanzi narrowed his eyes and asked, war? Is there any war? Alex looked at Tuanzi with wide eyes, as if he had seen a ghost in the daytime. You don't even know this? Alex wanted to continue speaking, but was interrupted by Garp coughing violently and scolded. You little brat, you don't know how to exercise all day long. Why are you always running to me? Since you know you can't beat our dumplings, why don't you seize every minute and every second to practice? After all, the genius boy in the youth camp is only a 10-year-old boy. His swordsmanship is acceptable, but he doesn't know so much about human nature, he said honestly. Advertisement Tuanzi, whose eyes were red from crying, stamped his feet angrily, causing the bluestone under his feet to shatter. He quickly walked over and grabbed the wreath on Garp's head, threw it out with all his strength, and said angrily. Alex looked helplessly at Marine hero Garp. Garp sighed heavily and rolled his eyes while lying on the wicker chair. I didn't catch him personally, which was the biggest concession. It wasn't until they reached the top floor that Tuanzi tried to get closer to the tower, only to be stopped by Marine in front of him. Tuanzi gritted his teeth, exhaled a long breath, and turned his head to glare at Garp. Garp on the recliner just smiled awkwardly, like a split chrysanthemum. I have told your fat grandpa to cook you a delicious meal at noon. After eating, you can see your master in the afternoon. Tuanzi is so smart. Judging from the reaction of Master Garp, it is obvious that he does not want him to know about this matter. The reason why he may be hiding it from him is only related to his master. Tuanzi ran out in a hurry and asked about Ace's location when he saw someone. She had been living in seclusion in the small courtyard for the past few months, and few Marines knew her. Seeing Master Garp with a smile on his face, Tuanzi suddenly turned red and started crying for no reason. After Alex left, Garp just kept explaining to Tuanzi. Alex smiled awkwardly, stopped talking, turned around, smiled brightly at Tuanzi, and left the gate of opening. The location is very easy to find. Just above the Marine Headquarters office building, a temporary tower was built, where Ace was imprisoned. Marine hero Garp felt that his heart was going to be broken. He knew that with Tuanzi's personality, something would inevitably happen after he found out about Ace, so he sealed the news so tightly. Garp was silent, staring blankly as his white cloak was hung high, with the two big black characters of justice floating in the wind, making a hunting sound. After thinking for a long time, Garp said, "You are still young. First, I'm the Marine hero Garp. Ace is a big pirate. Since Ace chose to become a pirate, he should know the result today." Alas, Tuanzi really has to think about it and breaks into Ace's place. If the relationship between Tuanzi and Cheng Cheng is exposed, it will be a big trouble. How can you still laugh? Why don't you care? Advertisement. Fire Fist Ace will be beheaded in 3 days. White beard, red hair, Cheng Cheng, and the Revolutionary Army among the 5 emperors will all attack here at the same time to rescue Ace. As he spoke, Tuanzi burst into tears as if he had been greatly wronged. "If you don't care, Uncle Ace will be beheaded by you, and Master, Junior Uncle Luffy, and I will ignore you from now on. Got it? My dad also said that the 5 elders have given a death order this time. They would rather fight to the death than surrender to those pirates. Fire Fist Ace must die no matter what this time, otherwise there will be no order in this world in the future," said. "The scale of this war is too large and the matter is too complicated. Master doesn't want you to worry, so he chose to hide it from you. Besides, you have wanted to see your master for a long time. But I didn't expect that in the end it would be a close relationship. I won't leave. You are not my master. If you don't save Ace, I will go." Below the tower is where Sengoku and the others held their meeting. In addition, the tower is surrounded by elite Marine guards on 3 floors inside and 3 floors outside. There are also pacifists on the front, rear, left and right sides. She held the Dragon Slayer knife tightly, stepped out in front of Alex, and said coldly, "You are not allowed to leave until you make it clear." After Tuanzi identified the direction, he went straight to the top tower. But after seeing Tuanzi's age and that harmless rosy face, he just thought he was from the youth camp and gave Tuanzi a general direction. After saying that, he slammed the door and walked out. "Master Garp, although that guy Ace is a bit annoying, he is my second uncle, my master's brother, and your grandson. But why isn't Uncle Ace by your side now? Why don't you protect him?" He stood up from the wicker chair with difficulty, pushed the door open and went out. When entering the office building, Tuanzi had a smooth journey. She had been here with Garp several times before, and most of the Marines had seen this little girl. "Before coming here, Master told me that as long as I stay with Master Garp, no one will dare to bully me in the future, saying that Master Garp, you are the most powerful person in the world." Garp sighed. Although Tuanzi was young, his swordsmanship skills could not be treated as a child. He didn't know where Cheng Cheng found this child. Chapter 211 Silent Agreement. Although it is a temporary tower, it is not rough. With 4 cornices and hollows in all directions, Ace can be monitored from the outside at all times. There is a huge square sea tower stone at the base of the platform, with various Poseidon types carved on it, which is overwhelming and shocking in all directions. Not to mention touching this huge sea tower stone, even within 3 steps, some devil fruit users will become dizzy and their whole body will become weak. A simple wooden staircase on the ground leads to the high platform. Ace sat cross-legged on the high platform of the tower, with all his limbs fixed by iron chains and a sea tower stone shackle around his neck. His body was covered in blood, especially his face was covered with bruises and bulging blood clots. As a result, the faces on both sides are different in size. The left eye was completely purple and could only be opened through a tiny crack. The right eye was completely swollen. It was very difficult to open it and could not see anything. Tuanzi saw from below that Uncle Ace had turned into such a miserable look, and he became angry and shouted, "Ace, who beat you like this? I will avenge you, I will kill him." Ace, who was dizzy, suddenly heard this familiar voice. He suddenly woke up for a moment. He moved forward with difficulty, lowered his head and opened his left eye hard, and finally saw the familiar figure clearly. Ace shook his head vigorously to indicate that Tuanzi should not be impulsive. But the more Tuanzi saw Ace like this, the more angry he became, and he cursed angrily, "You're worthless, who hit you?" With that said, he strode forward to break away from the obstruction of those Marines. If those Marines who had received death orders saw other people, they would have shot without any nonsense, but when they saw a little girl coming from the other side, they hesitated. The 2 Marines stepped forward and stood in front of the group seriously, advising, "Little girl, this is not your place to play. Have you seen those 4 big bears? If you take one more step forward, they will emit lasers, shoot you. They are robots, but they have no emotions." The angry Tuanzi didn't care so much. He clenched the dragon-slaying knife with 5 fingers. Just as he was about to pull out the handle, he thought of the agreement with his master and his body stiffened. The 2 muscular Marines advised, "Go back quickly, little girl. If you are bumped into by others later, you won't be able to leave even if you want to." After calming down, Tuanzi observed the surroundings. There were nearly hundreds of Marines closely monitoring her. These gun-wielding Marines were not much of a threat to her. The key was the 4 giant bears that were as tall as each other. They exuded an extremely dangerous aura. It put a lot of pressure on Tuanzi, and at her feet is Sengoku's office, with almost all of Marine's highest combat power nearby. Advertisement: don't be impulsive, don't be impulsive. Tuanzi rubbed his cheeks, forced a smile and asked, can you let me go upstairs to see Ace? Let's talk for a while and I'll leave. With so many of you here, you won't be afraid of me rescuing Ace, right? The Marine in front still looked serious and said, little girl, this is a rule. We have nothing to do. If it weren't for your young age, we would have shot you. Tuanzi said angrily, I can just go up and stay for 10 minutes, right? Marine with a serious face shook his head. Don't say 10 minutes, not even 1 minute. Tuanzi's hand holding the dragon-slaying knife began to tremble uncontrollably, and he really wanted to kill them all with one strike. At this time, the Marines in front of them suddenly saluted in unison with solemn expressions. Garp hurried over and said, let her go in, I will watch here and there will be no problem. The leader, Marine, still looked embarrassed and hesitated. Lieutenant General Garp, the Warring States Fleet Admiral has specifically stated that no one can approach Ace, even if you were here. Garp didn't bother to embarrass these little soldiers, and they didn't have the authority. He shook his foot hard, and a big hole was made in the roof. Garp shouted, Warring States. Feeling the domineering aura above their heads, the other generals below lowered their heads one after another, not daring to look at the angry Garp. Now Garp is like a volcano that is about to erupt at any time, and no one is willing to mess with him at this time. Warring States shook his head and smiled bitterly. He still couldn't avoid what was coming. He originally thought of pretending to be deaf and dumb, letting Garp make trouble for a while before going back, but he didn't expect Garp to do this directly. This old guy seems really angry. Sengoku tiptoed and flew up from the hole above his head. He stood in front of Garp and looked at him helplessly. Just 10 minutes. Besides, this little girl is not easy. If you want to go up, you have to take off your sword first. Garp looked at Sengoku with disdain and snorted. A dog has eaten your courage, right? At such a young age, Tuanzi, are you still worried about rescuing Ace in front of you? She is still a child. Warring States Fleet Admiral just said with a serious face. Garp, the 5 elders have made a clear decision. I hope you can understand the seriousness of this matter. Without saying a word, Tuanzi placed all 3 swords on his waist on the ground, pushed Marine in front of him hard, and ran up the stairs quickly. Ace tried his best to open his eyes so that he could see Tuanzi's face clearly, and said hoarsely, Xiao Tuanzi, I didn't expect to see you here before I die. I made a profit before I died. Advertisement. Tuanzi, who looked sad and angry, asked hurriedly, Ace, please tell me how I can save you. I only have 10 minutes. Let's talk about old times later. Then Tuanzi came close to Ace's ear and whispered in Ace's ear. My master, Sabo, Whitebeard, and Red Hair will all come to save you. Don't die easily. Ace, who was holding on for a breath, would have committed suicide long ago if he hadn't known that Cheng Cheng and the others would come to save him. How could he have waited for Marine to insult him like this? He thought carefully and said seriously, look at my half-dead state. I definitely have no chance to escape now. If you can find a way to destroy the stone shackles on my neck, I might still have a glimmer of hope in the war. Tuanzi thought for a while. No, you will definitely be the focus of everyone's attention on the day of the battle. Even if they kill you on the spot, they won't let you escape. Ace smiled helplessly. No matter when he escaped, it was almost zero. At this moment, his physical condition would not allow him to escape even without the restraints of Hailu stone. Then he was surprised to see Tuanzi opening his mouth but making no sound, so he also opened his mouth subconsciously. Tuanzi found the right moment, flicked his finger, and a fairy bean flew into Ace's mouth silently like lightning. Ace immediately realized that this was the fairy bean that Cheng Cheng had given him, and he swallowed it directly without hesitation. Middle. Tuanzi continued to move his mouth slightly, but still made no sound. Ace, who could read spoken language, understood what Tuanzi was trying to say. Wait for me at 12 o'clock at night. Ace looked at Tuanzi with horrified eyes and shook his head wildly. The injuries on his body were recovering rapidly, and the chains on his limbs were clanking. The Marines below thought something had happened above and wanted to go up and check it out. Garp said angrily. With me and Sengoku here, when will it be your turn to worry? You all stand still for me. The Marines stopped and continued to stand guard. Warring States looked down at the time and said softly, Garp, it's almost time. Garp said angrily. Wait a little longer. Tuanzi didn't let the 2 strongest men in the Marines wait too long, and they walked down the wooden ladder in a short while. With an angry look on his face, Tuanzi suddenly raised his foot and kicked the stairs leading to a higher place into pieces. The other Marines were suddenly shocked and looked at Tuanzi with wide eyes. Is this the power that a little girl has? Sengoku smiled bitterly and shook his head. If you want to vent, vent it. It's better to kick the stairs than kick him, the Marine Fleet Admiral. Chapter 212. The storm is coming in the afternoon. When Cheng Cheng and Tuanzi agreed to pick her up, Cheng Cheng called Tuanzi using the phone bug and said that she was already waiting for her not far from the beach. But Tuanzi refused and told the master that he would give him a big gift tonight and then leave. On the other side of the phone bug, Cheng Cheng didn't care. He could wait until tomorrow, but he was a little curious. Before, Tuanzi had been crying and shouting to leave Marine headquarters. What kind of gift could make her sacrifice so much? As for whether there is danger, Cheng Cheng is not worried. As long as Garp is there, it is absolutely safe. Besides, Tuanzi is not a pirate now, so even the Warring States period has no reason to arrest this little girl Tuanzi. In the small courtyard, Tuanzi, who practices swordplay crazily every afternoon, is surprisingly quiet today. After a while, Garp stepped over the threshold carrying a dumbbell weighing 100 kilograms, and whispered to Tuanzi. Shout Tuanzi, if you, a girl, develop muscles like Grandpa, it won't look very good. You will scare away all those boys in the future. Tuanzi rolled her eyes and ignored the marine hero, and she didn't want to ignore him now. Garp put the dumbbells in front of Tuanzi, then returned to the recliner, looked at Tuanzi with a smile on his face, and said happily, "It's still Tuanzi who knows he cares about me, unlike your master who just left when he said he wanted to." As he spoke, the smile on Garp's face became even bigger, filled with pride. It's only been half a year now, and he has become a martial emperor as famous as that old guy with Whitebeard, Tuanzi made up his mind not to talk to Garp and sat down cross-legged. With a thought, the dragon-slaying knife lying horizontally on the stone table trembled, flew out of the scabbard, and floated in front of Tuanzi. Tuanzi reached out and touched the sword gently, as if comforting a younger child. Dragon-slayer, whether you can succeed or not depends on you. The blade of the dragon-slaying sword shook and buzzed again. Garp has seen Tuanzi wield a sword like this many times. Even though he has lived for decades, he has never heard of anyone who can use a sword to this extent. Tuanzi thought again, and the dragon-slaying knife drew a circle flexibly and elegantly in the air, and then got under the dumbbell weighing 100 kilograms. Tuanzi could feel that both his physical strength and energy were rapidly draining away. It was much more difficult than simply wielding a sword in the past, so he casually threw a fairy bean into his mouth. Advertisement. Although he still can't figure out the reason, Garp understands that Tuanzi's talent in kendo is compared to that of his peers. It can be said that he can easily crush others. Suddenly, after several loud cannon blasts, a strong wind suddenly rose, white clouds rolled, and the flag hanging high in the marine vendor square fluttered in the wind and made a hunting sound. Without the suppression of the dumbbell, the dragon slayer immediately stabilized. He tried several times to stop the falling dumbbell, but failed. In less than 2 minutes, the dragon-slaying sword kept rising directly to the top of the clouds. Tuanzi below was breathing heavily, and no trace of the dragon-slaying sword could be seen. Tuanzi gave out a bitter smile with difficulty, gritted his teeth and persisted for another 3 minutes. Feeling a little dizzy, this time he controlled the dragon slayer knife to slowly descend. Tuanzi continued. Thanks to my master, he said that your iron fists are invincible. What kind of bullshit is invincible? You are so timid. I don't believe how strong your fists can be. Tuanzi was covered in sweat, and all his energy was focused on the dragon slayer knife. He didn't notice what Garp was whispering. This time it just made the rain heavier, which was not a big deal at all. He once tried to cut off the traction to figure out what it was. After that, he secretly tried many methods, but still failed. Then Garp muttered Dragon Slayer in his heart, and whispered, "This name is not very auspicious, it is too murderous, and it is not suitable for a little girl." Garp said with a bitter face, "Let's change it to another one. Except for this, Master can't promise you, everything else can be promised to you. Blue sky and white clouds, clear sky." The people at the dispatch center didn't bother to report such trivial matters. After all, this kind of thing was very common. Even if Garp didn't mention it, they would make artificial rainfall from time to time in such a hot weather. Tuanzi, who had sweat beads on his forehead, was full of joy and said happily, "Continue, a little higher, a little higher." At around 5 o'clock in the afternoon, the summer sun was still very fierce and had no tendency to fall into the sea. The scorching high temperature caused the mist on the sea surface to evaporate. He himself was not deeply involved in swordsmanship, and could only vaguely feel a mysterious aura between Tuanzi and the Dragon Slayer sword. Advertisement. The sword body slowly rose, holding up the dumbbell from the middle. The dumbbell weighing 100 kilograms was held up precariously and slowly rose up. Garp was silent for a while, just shaking his head. This time it was his turn to say nothing. At this moment, the dragon-slaying sword was flying higher and higher, far beyond the top floor of the courtyard. As it continued to rise, the dragon-slaying sword seemed to have adapted to the weight and became more comfortable. Tuanzi looked at Garp, who was known as the marine hero, with disdain, and said disdainfully, "Just one thing, can you save your grandson?" Garp said to himself on the side, Okay, I'll let you, the Dragon Slayer, also lift the dumbbells and exercise." He is almost certain that 20 years from now, the world will have an undisputed #1 female swordsman. Garp chuckled, knowing that his opportunity to show off had come. The wicker chair was still shaking regularly, and the person had disappeared. Tuanzi immediately beamed, the bigger the better. Garp suddenly felt a heart-wrenching pain, and immediately said with a smile, "As long as Xiao Tuanzi is willing to call me master again, I will agree to 100,000. Garp jumped into the air, held the dumbbells in his hands with a slight squeeze, and landed gracefully on the moonwalk. Garp's eyes suddenly lit up and he asked, "How big do you want it to be?" She saw that Garp's tone had lost its previous politeness, and said coldly, "Old man, can I ask you a favor?" Tuanzi thought about it for a while, looking at Garp with uncertainty in her eyes. After a long time, she said, "It's too hot now, old man, can you let it rain here?" But when it landed at the height of the clouds, the dragon-slaying knife shook for a while, and the dumbbell weighing 100 kilograms also tilted, falling directly from the sky and hitting the ground. Marine with a little bit of common sense would understand that a storm is about to come. Immediately, Lieutenant General Garp left the small courtyard, went to the dispatch center of the command headquarters, and mobilized 5 artificial rainfall ships with a wave of his hand. At this moment, Tuanzi also felt that the pressure was suddenly reduced, and his body felt relaxed. He stood up unsteadily and saw that the dragon-slaying sword flew into the scabbard again. Chapter 213 Escape. After a while, the wind howled and dark clouds covered the sky. In the distance, a dark cloud rolled over the city. Tuanzi was sitting cross-legged on the bluestone in the middle of the courtyard. Suddenly, a drop of rain fell on the tip of her nose. It was cold and slightly painful. Tuanzi raised the corners of his mouth and smiled. In less than 5 minutes, the raindrops became denser and fell heavily on the ground of the small courtyard, making a crackling sound. The hot and dry air in summer instantly becomes refreshing and moist. Tuanzi refused and Garp held an umbrella, letting the raindrops fall on him, and his pink princess dress got soaked by the rain. She looked up at the sky, and the rain poured down, making her unable to open her eyes. She smiled. That's how it feels. Then Tuanzi closed his eyes and concentrated, breathed calmly, and regained his energy in the rain. Garp didn't know what Tuanzi was doing, so he thought it was another way of exercising that she came up with on a whim. He moved the wicker chair under the eaves and looked at the little girl whose breath was getting stronger every time she breathed in. He wondered if the heavy rain had the effect of helping him sleep, but he actually fell asleep listening to the sound of rain. Passed. Late at night, heavy rain continued. The water on the ground has covered the entire sole of the foot. Tuanzi, who was sitting in the rain, suddenly opened his eyes, and his eyes were filled with light. He skillfully carried the 3 swords of the Interpreter, the Dark Chaser and the Dragon Slayer on his waist. The dragon-slaying sword trembled, flew out of the scabbard, and floated around Tuanzi's waist. Tuanzi tiptoed a little, and his feet landed lightly on the dragon-slaying knife, as steady as a rock. She turned her head and glanced at Master Garp, who was still lying on the wicker chair and sleeping soundly. A look of determination appeared in her eyes. With a thought in her mind, she stepped on the Dragon Slayer's sword and rose quickly. Facing the violent wind and rain, the sword flew in the sky. The rainstorm was so heavy that if Tuanzi hadn't practiced before, he might have lost his footing and fallen down. The dumplings did not fly very high. If someone with good eyesight looked carefully on the ground, they could still see some black figures. However, it was windy and rainy now, and even if there were still people who were idle and awake, they would not look up to the sky. When flying near the marine office building, Tuanzi flew higher again to ensure that he would not be discovered by the 4 pacifists below. Garp revealed to him that the pacifists are actually mass-produced humanoid weapons. Currently, their sightlines have blind spots, especially above their heads. As long as they do not enter their field of vision, they will not alert the war machines. Tuanzi looked down and saw that he was right above the tower where Ace was imprisoned. Advertisement below is still the marine with 3 floors inside and 3 floors outside, waiting in full formation. The 4 pacifists stand motionless around the tower, like the 4 gods of war, looking down at all living beings. But no one noticed that Tuanzi was looking down at them above their heads. Tuanzi carefully controlled the dragon-slaying knife and landed slowly. After Ace, who was sitting on the high platform of the tower, ate fairy beans, his injuries all over his body healed and his mental state improved a bit, but he still looked skinny. In the afternoon, after getting the hint from Tuanzi, Ace didn't dare to sleep at all and paid full attention to the movements around him. If Tuanzi really takes the risk, he will risk his life to protect her. Suddenly, there was a violent storm. The familiar figure of Tuanzi appeared in front of her. Her clothes had not changed, she was still wearing the same pink princess dress. Ace's eyes widened and he didn't dare to make a sound. He just shook his head silently and used his eyes to signal Tuanzi to leave quickly. It was very dangerous here. Tuanzi chuckled, keeping his sword level with the high platform, and cautiously stepped out onto the high platform, his fingers slightly spread. The dragon-slaying knife seemed to be spiritual and flew automatically into the palm of Tuanzi's hand. The sound of wind and rain all around was so noisy that neither Tuanzi nor Ace dared to make a sound. Even if they spoke in a very small voice, it was useless. Ace stopped shaking his head at this moment and calmed down, looking at Tuanzi with soft eyes. Tuanzi put his index finger in front of his lips and made a silencing gesture. Taking a deep breath, Tuanzi shook his right hand. Water flowed around the Dragonslayer blade, and a light blue water film appeared to wrap the sword body. Ace looked at Tuanzi in shock. He could also breathe water, and he had even improved it into the breath of fire. But he didn't expect that Tuanzi could be used so easily and skillfully, and he could pick it up at his fingertips. Tuanzi, who stood in front of Ace, concentrated his energy with a look of perseverance and calmness that his age should not have in his eyes. In the midst of the violent storm, he boldly drew his sword. Moment. The Dragon Slayer knife drew 4 arc-shaped sword lights, and the iron chains binding Ace's limbs were cut silently like tofu. Ace, who had been prepared for a long time, had quick eyes and quick hands, and immediately grasped the break of the chain to prevent it from falling to the ground and making no sound. Ace looked nervous and his heart was beating rapidly. Was he really going to be saved by Tuanzi? If this is the case, how many dolls will I have to buy for Tuanzi in the future to repay this huge kindness? Tuanzi took another deep breath and struck hard at the last shackle on Ace's neck. Advertisement. There was a slight click, and the sea tower stone shackles suddenly broke. Tuanzi immediately lay down and clung to the ground, but this small voice had no sense of existence in the violent storm, and the marines and pacifists below did not notice any movement. Tuanzi and Ace looked at each other and smiled, both seeing each other's relief. Then the dumpling was tossed casually, and the Dragon Slayer knife was suspended in the air. He pointed at Ace first and then at himself. Ace understood instantly. He gently placed the sea stone shackles around his neck on the ground, took a step forward and stood firmly on the blade. Tuanzi chuckled and walked up slowly. She could already imagine her master's surprised expression when he saw Ace. What the hell, red hair, white beard, and Sabo too, what's the point of bringing so many people here? In the end, doesn't it depend on this heroine? After Tuanzi stepped on it, the entire sword sank instantly. Tuanzi was so frightened that he quickly concentrated all his energy on controlling the Dragon Slayer sword, and then stabilized the blade. The Dragon Slayer sword once again rose slowly and staggeringly. It took nearly 2 minutes to reach 100 meters in the air. The two still did not speak. Tuanzi looked excited and controlled the Dragon Slayer knife to accelerate forward. Against the violent wind and rain, Ace whispered from the front, "Tuanzi, you are my savior." The wind and rain were so loud that Tuanzi couldn't hear what Ace said for a while. You want to treat me to the most expensive wine?" Ace smiled happily and said nothing more. He didn't say thank you for the kindness. How could he thank him for saving his life? Edgeworth continued to speed up, and a black shadow passed silently over the Marine headquarters. Soon, the two of them flew over the Marine headquarters office building and passed through the Marine headquarters gate below. Hope is right in front of you. As long as they fly out of Marine headquarters, they will be free. At this moment, Tuanzi was extremely weak, her forehead was covered with sweat, and the huge mental energy consumption made her unable to open her eyes, and the sword began to shake. Tuanzi gritted his teeth, opened the treasured jade bottle, and drank the water of life in one breath. Suddenly the whole person regained his energy, the sword stabilized again, and suddenly accelerated. Ace, who was extremely nervous, suddenly widened his eyes and shouted. Stop. Chapter 214 Rainy Night. Tuanzi's current sword was very fast. After the sudden deceleration, it generated a lot of inertia and continued to move forward. There was no way to stop immediately. Ace's eyes were cold, and his arms were instantly covered with armed domineering force, supported in front of him. Then the two of them seemed to hit an invisible wall and were forced to stop. Ace, who just had a premonition of danger, now finally sees the source of danger ahead. In front of them, extremely fine silk threads were evenly arranged at intervals of about 5 centimeters, forming an invisible wall blocking them. If Ace hadn't noticed in time to stop Tuanzi, I'm afraid both of them would have been cut to death by the extremely thin thread. Tuanzi said angrily. We are about to leave this ghost place. What on earth is this? Look at me cutting it with my sword. Ace's eyes were cold and he said in a deep voice, Doflamingo. As soon as he finished speaking, Doflamingo, who was still sleeping on the bed, opened his eyes. First he felt a sense of surprise, and then he looked up to the sky and laughed crazily. I didn't expect it. I didn't expect that the unintentional backup plan actually worked. Those people are really rubbish. He quickly pressed the red button on the bedside, opened the window, and turned into a pink figure, rushing toward the entrance of Marine headquarters. A piercing red alarm suddenly sounded throughout the Marine headquarters. Almost at the same time, all the lights in Marineland were turned on, illuminating the entire night sky as bright as day. In every direction, a white shadow rose from the ground and flew into the air. Marines like a white tide below surged out with guns in hand, and soon someone shouted to the sky, Ace is up there, catch him quickly. Ace gritted his teeth. Since he had been discovered, he couldn't control it so much. His aura surged, and a hot fire fist instantly appeared on his fist, and he punched the thin line in front of him. The flames rose and burned around the filaments in front, forming a network of intertwined flames. However, the thin lines were not burned, but the thin lines in front of them became denser. Without saying a word, Tuanzi pulled out the extremely sharp interpreter and slashed at it diagonally. However, as soon as Tuanzi raised his hand, he lost control of it and couldn't chop it down no matter what. After his body stiffened for a while, he slashed towards Ace instead. Advertisement Doflamingo flew to a high-altitude position behind them, and the index fingers of his hands continued to expand and contract, as if he was playing a piano that did not exist. He sneered, and there was praise for the two of them in his voice. Fire Fist Ace, you are so powerful, I almost let you escape. To be honest, even I didn't expect that my birdcage would actually work. That old guy from the Warring States period couldn't bear to accept it. Sure enough, Ginger is still hotter than old. Ace reached out and grabbed Tuanzi's wrist. He knew clearly that he would not be able to escape this time. Marine below was completely alarmed. He said to Tuanzi without any doubt. Tuanzi, you must listen to me. Leave quickly now. Just say that you were coerced by me. Grandpa Garp is here, and you are still young. They will not be familiar with you. Stay away from me now. Tuanzi made a cold sound, and a red flame rose up from her body like Ace. The rain fell on her and vaporized directly, forming white mist. Tuanzi once asked his master, if you are so strong, why don't you find a small island with beautiful mountains and clear waters and a pleasant climate to live? What are you doing in this desert where birds don't poop? Could it be that she is actually an old monster with the face of a child? Several thin threads instantly penetrated Tuanzi's body and inserted into the bones. A cloud of blood mist exploded at the joints of her limbs. Because planting trees can make you stronger, then why does the master want to become stronger? Is it also to kill the celestial dragons? The reason why the master wants to become stronger is not to kill people, but to save people. There is no way. The old man is very stubborn. I warned him a long time ago, but the burden on the old man's shoulders is too heavy. So much so that I simply don't dare to let it go, and I can't let it go. As a grandson, I can only put in more effort. Tuanzi choked in Ace's arms. You don't know. At that time, Tuanzi didn't quite understand what her master meant. Later, the more she thought about it, the clearer she realized one thing. The thin string holding Tuanzi's shoulder and wrist was also burned. Ace has chosen his own path. The old man is extremely stubborn, and Luffy's time has not yet come. Why plant trees? He sneered, stretched out his index finger and tapped the dumplings that were coming towards him. The tip of his index finger shook at super high speed, and little phantoms appeared. Although he was surprised in his heart, he took action without stopping. Advertisement. It was almost Ace. Why didn't you run away? Why did you come back? You are so stupid. Do you know how important you are to the master? Do you know how long the master has been planning to keep you alive? Tuanzi cried harder. She and her master had just arrived at the first night of Yuyan. Every time it shakes, a thin line will be emitted at high speed from the fingertips. In the night sky, the trajectory of the transparent line cannot be seen at all. It seems like everything the master has been doing has to do with Ace. Cheng Cheng replied casually, I came here to plant trees. Ace, who had passed through the wall of fire, was not willing to leave alone like this. He turned into a ball of fire, leaned down and held Tuanzi in his arms. On the interpreter's sword, crimson flames surged. Tuanzi swung his sword and shot out a crimson flaming sword, slashing forward. At that time, the starry sky was bright on the rooftop. With a thought in his mind, Tuanzi raised his foot and kicked Ace at the same time. The Dragon Slayer carried Ace quickly through the wall of fire and flew into the distant night sky. When the thin thread meets the red flame, it melts instantly. Ace just looked at Tuanzi calmly and said softly, I know everything. Ace looked at Tuanzi with a calm face, touched her forehead, and said softly, Tuanzi, let's not run away. How about waiting for your master to overthrow Malinfondo? Tuanzi, who was in severe pain all over her body, gritted her teeth. The rain falling on her face could not tell whether it was rain or tears. She wanted to hit Ace, who was failing, but she found that her limbs could no longer use the strength, and she cursed with red eyes. Tuanzi let out a miserable scream. The interpreter fell from his hands, and the whole person fell from the air. After all, the captain of the Bonnie Pirates does have the ability to turn people into children. She used her strength to turn around and slash at Doflamingo with her sword. She waved her hands and swung out a dragon's cross-flame slash. Doflamingo looked surprised. Even to death, he never expected that the thin wire, which was usually said to be tougher than steel wire, could be easily broken by such a little girl. Once you let go, the faith of countless people in this world will collapse. I'm telling you, if you dare to die here, I will chop your body into pieces and feed it to the dogs. Then what should we do? Chapter 215 Wineglass. There was a burst of chaotic footsteps around them, and the Marines, denser than the rain, surrounded the two of them, pointing guns at them. Fleet Admiral Sengoku, Admiral Kizaru, Admiral Momosagi, who already had one arm, Admiral Chaden, and other Shichibukai, including all Marine Vice Admirals, all surrounded them for a while. Doflamingo stepped on the void and moved his fingers wildly. Circles of transparent thin threads tied up Ace and Tuanzi respectively. Tuanzi had no strength to resist after his limbs were penetrated, while Ace was caught without any resistance. Doflamingo, who fell to the ground, smiled sinisterly and said, Sengoku Fleet Admiral, do you have to give me a great credit? If it weren't for me tonight, Firefist Ace would have been rescued by a little girl. It's okay if you can't kill this One Piece bloodline, but if this little girl is to successfully save people, once word gets out, the entire Marine headquarters will probably laugh to death, right? Sengoku's face was as gloomy as water. Even he couldn't imagine how Tuanzi rescued Ace. Although he had always disliked Doflamingo, if he hadn't been here today, I'm afraid something would really have happened, he snorted. Don't worry, I will certainly remember you after the war. After saying that, Warring States took a deep look at Tuanzi and saw that the little girl's limbs and joints were covered in blood. Even the heavy rain could not clean away the blood on her body. A trace of regret and reluctance flashed deep in his eyes. No matter how much you like this little girl who loves to drink, you can't pretend that nothing happened when there are countless pairs of eyes watching her. Warring States waved his hand, and soldiers immediately rushed out from the side and subdued Ace and Tuanzi, and also put on the sea tower stone shackles. Tuanzi stared at Sengoku without giving in and looked at him, shouting, Bad guys, they are all a group of bad guys. My mother also said before that Sengoku is a rare good fleet admiral in Marine, bah. When my mother and father were killed by the celestial dragons, you didn't even dare to fart. My mother actually told me not to bear any grudge against you in the future. Kill him, old man, kill me now if you can, my master will definitely avenge me, and all of you will die. Warring States frowned slightly, raised his hand to stop the Marines, and asked in confusion, Who is your mother? Who is your master? Tuanzi looked at Warring States with cold eyes. I didn't plan to tell you originally, because my mother always said that you were a good person, and if I told you, it would only make you uncomfortable. Now you want to catch Ace again. What did Ace do wrong? There are so many damn pirates in the world and you don't catch them, and you don't kill so many beasts like celestial dragons. Why can't you get along with Ace? Since you want to know my mother's name, well, I'll tell you, my mother is William Sigrid and my father is Jack Barnaby. Advertisement. Sengoku's pupils shrank, his body froze on the spot, and he shouted at the Marine in front of him. He stepped forward with trembling hands and looked at the dumplings carefully. At this moment he felt a little dizzy. Garp and Tuanzi came here once before when he came to ask him to borrow a drink. At that time, when he first saw Tuanzi, he felt inexplicably familiar and friendly, but he couldn't explain why. Later, it can only be attributed to Garp's relationship with Iujiwu that he loved Tuanzi very much. So he generously went to the cellar and took out the wine that he was usually reluctant to drink. He once had an only female apprentice. She was said to be an apprentice, but in fact she had been with him since she was a child. She was almost like half a daughter. The female apprentice had blonde hair, was gentle and generous, and was very popular among the Marines. The only thing is that she doesn't like to fight and kill. As a girl, she is addicted to alcohol, so that despite her amazing talent, she only became a Marine lieutenant colonel. However, she took a different approach and studied the wine glasses in her free time. She always complained to the Warring States period that the wine glasses were too rough now, and drinking should be an elegant thing. The Warring States period, who had always been a teetotaler, didn't know these things, so he could only make wine glasses for his apprentices and use them as teacups, while silently storing wine for his apprentices in the cellar. As the female apprentices became more and more skilled in making wine glasses, the wine glass made by her has an elegant, supple, smooth and warm shape, a round and thin body, and a light and pleasant weight. On the one hand, it has excellent beauty and touch, on the other hand, it allows the wine to fully contact with the air, and the temperature, concentration, harmony, uniformity and richness are all displayed. Let the bold thing of drinking wine become very elegant. Gradually, she became more and more famous throughout the Marine headquarters, and everyone knew about it, especially the women in Marine, who highly sought after the wine glasses she made. Almost everyone has one, and it is extremely popular. She only charges part of the material fee, which is equivalent to giving it away for free. Later, his reputation became more and more popular, and somehow he alerted the celestial dragons in the holy land of Marijoya. The Tianlong people are also very curious about what kind of wine glass it is that can have such a great reputation. Send an order to send some wine glasses over. Advertisement. She had never been to the Holy Land, so she gladly accepted the job and would make a batch of new wine glasses and send them to the Holy Land when she had nothing to do. But later, as time went by, one of the celestial dragons fell in love with her beauty. Later, tragedy happened. On that day, the dragon people deliberately broke the wine glass to convict her. Her husband, who had a good temper, was hung up and beaten to death by the dragon people. The Warring States period, when he was still away on official duties, hurried back after hearing the news, and found that the female apprentice's home had been reduced to ashes. He originally thought that the girl he should call his master died in the fire, but to his surprise, she didn't die and still appeared in front of him. Warring States was filled with tears, and he knelt tremblingly in front of Tuanzi. He wanted to reach out and touch her forehead. Tuanzi took a step back and said coldly, "Why are you, a Marine Fleet Admiral, kneeling down to me? Isn't it embarrassing?" Warring States ignored his gaffe and said softly, "Irene, I didn't expect you to be alive. It's great, it's great." Tuanzi backed away again and said sternly, "My name is not Irene, my name is Tuanzi." Warring States chief exhaled, "I was the one who gave you your name back then, of course I know your name." Tuanzi pursed his lips and shouted while crying, "I don't care about your bad name, Ba. If you were willing to take action back then, my mother would definitely have survived. You are the murderer who killed my mother." Warring States period fell to his knees in the heavy rain, his heart wrenching like a knife and the pain penetrating into his bones. The young Marines around didn't know what happened to the Sengoku Fleet Admiral. They looked at each other in shock. For a moment, without Sengoku's orders, they could only stand in the rain one by one. But most of the old people in those days still used the wine glasses made by Lieutenant Colonel Sigurd, and some of them were well preserved and are even still in use today. As soon as they heard the name that they had gradually forgotten, and then looked at Warring States' performance, they understood it instantly. The eyes that looked at Tuanzi were full of sympathy. The crowd in the rear automatically parted a path, and Marine Hero Cape rushed over in a hurry. Seeing the scene in front of him, he was shocked and said, "Shao Tuanzi, did you cut off Sengoku's leg?" Chapter 216 The Moon Broken in the Water. Sengoku turned around and looked at Garp angrily, thinking, "Are you too confident in your disciple? No matter how powerful Shao Tuanzi is, can he cut off the legs of our Buddha's Warring States period? She just broke my heart. It's not right." Warring States suddenly realized that in terms of seniority, Irene should call him Master, but now he is called Master Garp, so he has not been demoted a generation in vain. He looked at Garp and asked, "Who is Irene's master?" Garp looked confused and asked, "Who is Aaron?" Shao Tuanzi said angrily, "I'm not Irene, I only have one name, my name is Tuanzi." Garp looked around and saw that almost the entire army was out in battle, and then thought of the Tuanzi's sword fighting in the heavy rain today, and then looked at Ace who was tied up next to him, and he instantly understood what had happened, the whole story. He had thought that Tuanzi might take the risk to save Ace, and he thought he could rush to the tower, but was stopped by other Marines, so he slept directly in the yard, thinking that he could rescue Tuanzi quickly, and it would not hurt Tuanzi if he fell. It's a trivial crime, and he'll be able to deal with it if he comes forward and gives it a ha-ha. But he never expected that Tuanzi would quietly bring Ace to the entrance of Marine headquarters. It seemed that he almost succeeded. For a moment, Garp didn't know whether to be pleased with Tuanzi's strength or to scold other Marines for being useless. When Warring States asked who the master of Tuanzi was, of course Garp couldn't tell him even if he was beaten to death. If he did, Tuanzi wouldn't be let go so easily. Garp looked at Sengoku with a questioning look. Fleet Admiral Sengoku stood up slowly. He was invincible and looked like an old man at this moment. It was very difficult to stand up and he sighed. Tuanzi is Sigurd's child. Garp's eyes widened and his heart trembled. He still had 2 brand new glasses stored in the attic of his courtyard, but he was never willing to use them. He looked at the dumplings and murmured, "What a coincidence." Warring States said, "Yes, I never expected that her child would still be alive." Ace, who was tied up by 5 flowers, looked a little calmer. If this was the case, Tuanzi would not be implicated by him. However, he always had a cold look on his face, as if he was looking forward to death, and did not look at Garp. Advertisement. Garp laughed, patted Sangguo on the shoulder and said, "Then why are you still tied up? Release it quickly." Marine on the side looked hesitant, just looking at Sengoku, waiting for his decision. Warring States touched his chin and was silent. Tuanzi jumped to his feet and cursed, "Coward Fleet Admiral, if you can, kill me and Ace together. When you see it, my master will flatten your marine headquarters." Warring States looked at Tuanzi in confusion and asked softly, "Tuanzi, who is your master? I want to thank her very much. I didn't expect that she could train you so well." Garp suddenly coughed violently, which made people feel distressed. With Tuanzi's cleverness, he immediately realized the seriousness of the matter, turned his head, looked up at the sky, and kept silent. Fleet Admiral Warring States felt another heart-wrenching pain. At this moment, the rain slowly decreased a bit, and it was no longer such a violent storm. He coughed lightly and said solemnly, "Lieutenant General Garp, Irene's attempt to save the criminal Ace failed. This is a serious crime. But now that the war is imminent, I will temporarily detain you there and you will be responsible for taking care of it. If Irene is lost, I will question you." Garp frowned and said, "That's not right. Tuanzi is so young and she didn't rescue Ace. What's her crime? Did she succeed? I think it should have given us a big reminder that the supervision of Ace is still not strict enough. We at Marine should reflect on it." Doflamingo on the side frowned as he heard something more and more strange. How could such a huge crime be turned into a trivial matter in just a few words between these two people? But in the end, Marine was still blamed for his lack of supervision? So what about him as the biggest contributor in this incident? What about the promised reward? Doflamingo chuckled and stepped forward to say something, but was directly interrupted by Sengoku's decisive voice. "Everyone has worked hard tonight. The day after tomorrow is the day to execute Ace. Let's prepare ourselves for this big battle." After everyone heard this, they dispersed one after another. Fire Fist Ace was imprisoned in the tower again, and the guard's strength was doubled. Everyone leaves the place. Doflamingo was left standing alone in the rain, with a sinister look in his eyes. Advertisement. As for Tuanzi, who failed to rescue, he was escorted back to the courtyard by Garp with a serious look on his face. Along the way, the wind gradually stopped, the branches stopped swinging wildly, and the rain became lighter and lighter, turning into a drizzle. The dark clouds gradually dissipated, revealing a corner of the moon. Tuanzi suddenly stepped on the water on the ground. The moon shattered in the water and splashed all over the sky. He said angrily, just a little bit worse, old man. You are as useless as the coward Warring States period. Do you still have family affection in your eyes? A cold-blooded animal?" After Garp walked into the small courtyard, he turned around and slowly closed the door, saying softly, "If Master really doesn't care about family ties, you won't be able to leave this courtyard tonight. Fortunately, you didn't say Cheng Cheng's name just now, otherwise, even if Warring States and I were willing to let you go, it would be useless. Now the world government attaches no less importance to Cheng Cheng than any of the four emperors, or in other words, its status is higher than that of several other four emperors. People in the Holy Land have already noticed that your master can create phantom beast devil fruits. If they know that you are Cheng Cheng's only disciple, even the master, I don't know what the consequences will be." Tuanzi, whose anger had not yet dissipated, suddenly drew out his sword and blasted out a stream of crescent sword energy, instantly flattening the messy flowers in front of him. For a time, the flowers and leaves danced wildly. Garp smiled and looked at Tuanzi. The more he looked at it, the more pleased he became. Look at this domineering sword energy. It came from a casual sword strike by a little girl who was less than 9 years old. If he told it, who would dare to believe it? Not to mention, if Tuanzi really succeeds in rescuing Ace this time, it will be an unprecedented feat. Garp chuckled. "I really didn't expect you, Xiao Tuanzi, to be able to do this. Originally, I thought you would make a few lieutenant generals retreat in spite of the difficulties, but I didn't expect you. I really didn't expect you. Can you tell me, Master, how you achieved your weird sword control skills?" Tuanzi's eyes were determined, and he suddenly slashed out another sword energy, hitting the wall of the small courtyard, and a deep crack appeared on the wall made of stones. Garp is helpless. What did the wall do wrong? Creak, a light sound. The wooden door was pushed open, and Marine Fleet Admiral Sengoku cautiously stuck his head out and looked into the courtyard. Tuanzi suddenly drew out his black and white swords and slashed out a cross-flame slash. Chapter 217. Ace Warring States' expression remained unchanged, and his right palm instantly turned golden. He stretched out two fingers to clamp the two flaming sword energy. The powerful sword energy stayed in the air obediently. He couldn't help but admire. Yes, this sword move alone is a big step ahead of others of the same age. It is even better than your mother's talent in swordsmanship when she was young. It's a pity that she stopped practicing swords later. You don't deserve to talk about my mother, Tuanzi snorted, sheathed his swords and turned around. Full of helplessness, Warring States stepped into the courtyard and said in a deep voice, "Garp, send Irene away early tomorrow morning. The war will begin the day after tomorrow. I don't know how many buildings can be preserved in this holy place of justice. We know how powerful the enemy is this time. Even you and I dare not say that we will definitely survive this war. Let Tuanzi leave this place of right and wrong as soon as possible." Garp chuckled. "Sengoku, this is not your style. Aren't you always the most obedient to the world government's orders? Why would you do such a thing now?" Warring States took it for granted. Isn't the world government still aware of this matter? Besides, Ace is still here and nothing has changed. After the war is over, who will remember this little girl Irene? Tuanzi turned around and said angrily, "My name is Tuanzi, not Irene." After saying that, he stomped his feet and turned around angrily to go upstairs. Fleet Admiral Sengoku sighed deeply, and without saying goodbye to Garp, he staggered and pushed out the door. The hero Garp also let out a long sigh and looked at the tower where Ace was, with complicated eyes. These two old guys, who have known each other for many years, each spent the night with many worries. The next day, early morning. Now that things have happened, Tuanzi will definitely not be able to leave the Marine headquarters in a swagger like before. She simply packed up her usual favorite clothes and put them in a small suitcase and carried them behind her back. Pushing open the attic door, the air after the rain is extremely fresh, but the flowers and plants are a little withered. She only has this chance to save Ace. If she misses it and tries to save someone, she is seeking death. Not only will she not be able to help her master, but it will also increase her burden. It is the best choice for her to leave here now. Once her master-disciple relationship with Cheng Cheng is revealed, it may not be that easy to leave. Tuanzi didn't hesitate and said to Garp, "Let's go, old guy." Then he got into the food delivery truck like a cute rabbit, and a fat chef who liked to giggle pushed the food truck and left the Marine headquarters. Advertisement along the way, no one asked, and everything went smoothly. Although it is far from the normal meal delivery time, as Marine cooks, they often need to push the dining cart to the beach to deliver meals to some people on duty. No one doubts this normal dining cart. In less than half an hour, the fat chef pushed the dining cart to the dock. A small fishing boat had been prepared on the sea directly in front of him. The fat chef tapped the edge of the dining car 3 times. This was the safety signal agreed between him and Tuanzi. Without this signal, Tuanzi would not be able to come out even if he was beaten to death. He looked around cautiously, and after confirming again that no one noticed him, he said softly, "Xiao Tuanzi, come out." Half squatting in the dining car, Tuanzi stretched out his head and looked around, and then he was ejected at a very fast speed, landing on the opposite fishing boat in almost the blink of an eye. It only takes a blink of an eye, and no one will notice at all. The fat chef breathed a sigh of relief, relaxed his courage, and slowly got on the cart and walked onto the fishing boat. In his early years, he received many favors from Garp, and even saved his life. Several times, if it weren't for Garp's intervention, he would have died in the sea. Later, under Garp's recommendation, he successfully transferred to the cooking class and became the cook of his dreams. Even though he knew that if someone discovered this matter, he would be a capital offender, he still took the initiative to tell Garp his plan to rescue Tuanzi. At present, it seems that my plan is still implemented very carefully. The fat man looked back at Marine Fando. If he left this time, he might not have a chance to come back in the future, right? The worst case scenario is that I will work as a chef in the Black Justice Pirates in the future. Isn't Black Justice also justice? The fat chef, who had made up his mind, turned around and no longer lingered. He took a step forward. As soon as his feet landed on the deck of the fishing boat, his whole body was cut into uniform pieces of meat, and a large ball of blood exploded in the air. Before he died, the fat chef's mind went blank. He just widened his eyes and saw that the dumplings in the cabin were tied up with countless silk threads. The whole person was like a white cicada, with only one head exposed. Doflamingo, who was wearing a pink feather coat, flicked his fingers randomly and shook them randomly. In an instant, the entire fishing boat was cut by countless transparent thin lines, turning into a pile of broken wood floating on the water. He looked at Tuanzi with a sneer. "Little girl, you are the only disciple of that guy Cheng Cheng, how could I let you escape?" Tuanzi spat violently at Doflamingo, spraying it on his sunglasses, and cursed. "It's you again, you idiot, just wait for me. My master will turn around and chop you down." Advertisement. Doflamingo laughed sinisterly, wiped the saliva from his eyes, and kicked Tuanzi in the lower abdomen. Tuanzi suddenly screamed in pain, spurted out a mouthful of blood, flew backwards, and hit the dock heavily. The tense-looking Marines around them noticed the movement and raised their guns and loaded the bullets. After seeing clearly that it was Doflamingo, one of the Shichibukai, they all put their guns away. After Doflamingo flew past the pier, he walked leisurely towards the Marine headquarters building. With his index finger slightly raised, Tuanzi hung in the air, suspended behind Doflamingo. As we walked along, people soon recognized Tuanzi and showed surprise. Wasn't this little girl imprisoned by the hero Garp? Why did it fall into the hands of this Shichibukai again now? In the office at the top of the Marine headquarters, the backbones led by Sengoku were discussing tomorrow's battle plan. Even Garp, who had not had a meeting for a long time, appeared here unusually. Boom. The office door was pushed open. Doflamingo pressed his index finger down, and the floating dumpling quickly hit the wall opposite the office. There was a muffled sound on the wall, and Tuanzi slid down the wall, blood staining the white wall red. Everyone looked at each other in shock. Garp immediately clenched his fists and stood up. The solid wood chair under his butt exploded. Sengoku's face was as gloomy as water. He frowned and looked at Doflamingo, who had always been disgusted with him, and asked coldly, "What is going on?" Doflamingo chuckled and turned to look at Marine hero Garp playfully. Garp suppressed his overwhelming anger and said in a deep voice, "If I look at you for one more second, I will punch you to death." Doflamingo raised his hands in a gesture of surrender, and sneered, don't dare, don't dare. Marine hero Garp must not know about this little girl's escape. But it's not too late. Once this little girl escapes, we will lose a trump card against the Black Justice Pirates." Warring States was shocked and shouted, "What do you mean? Please explain clearly." Kizaru, who had been pretending not to recognize Dango, was shocked and realized something was wrong, but his face remained calm and calm. He twisted his buttocks and changed to a more comfortable sitting position. The other generals are a little confused. How can a little girl become the Black Justice Pirates? Chapter 218 Fred Doflamingo stroked his sunglasses, looked at everyone and smiled. The captain of the Black Justice Pirates, Cheng Cheng, has only one apprentice, this little girl. As long as we use this to threaten Cheng Cheng when Ace is executed tomorrow, maybe the entire Black Justice Pirates can withdraw from the battlefield. Everyone was shocked, looked at the little girl in disbelief, and started talking. Is she really that important to Cheng Cheng? How could such a major matter be such a child's play? Cheng Cheng is a peerless devil who kills people without blinking an eye or drying his eyes. He would give up the chance to save Ace for a little girl? Doflamingo did not refute anyone, but just turned to look at Garp. As far as I know, Cheng Cheng is the one who values friendship the most, right? Garp suddenly punched out, and the air in front of him was instantly compressed to the extreme, forming a powerful air shock wave. Doflamingo immediately dodged, and most of his pink feather coat withered away. He narrowly escaped Garp's attack, but the wall behind him exploded, and a hole as high as a person appeared. Through the hole, you can just see the sea in the distance. Garp snorted coldly, you won't be able to escape next time. Doflamingo shrugged, not daring to say anything more. Kizaru narrowed his eyes and said something bad to himself. Based on his understanding of Cheng Cheng, if he really threatened this little girl's life, he might be able to successfully threaten Cheng Cheng. If the war is delayed because of this incident, it will be detrimental to your future plans. It seems that this kid must be notified of this matter. Recently, Marine Headquarters has extremely strict monitoring of the phone network, and even making a call would be risky. But if I don't tell that kid this news, I'm afraid I will be settled by Chu Hu in the future. Warring States walked slowly to Tuanzi and squatted down. He made a knife with his hand and slashed it gently. The silk threads tied up like silkworm chrysalis on Tuanzi broke neatly. He looked at Doflamingo angrily and said coldly. As for her execution, I already said yesterday that although she is guilty, Irene is still young and is temporarily detained in prison. No one can use it privately. So what if she is Cheng Cheng's apprentice? When did we, Marine, need to use such despicable methods to deal with a gang of pirates? Everyone, she is only a child less than 9 years old. Even if we win this war with this disgusting method, what credibility do we, Marine, have? Can we live up to the word justice behind us? Huang Yuan interrupted and said seriously. Haha, based on my understanding of Cheng Cheng, he is ruthless and does all kinds of evil. Even if he threatens Tuanzi's life, it will probably be of no effect. Who are the Black Justice Pirates? They are all a group of cruel thugs in suits. You should all know that, less than 3 months after its establishment, it has already become the 5th emperor. Advertisement. Although he is an apprentice, in the final analysis, he is just a thug trained by Cheng Cheng himself. To threaten them with the life of a thug, I find it a bit funny. On the contrary, it is likely to arouse their ruthless and bloody nature. The other generals nodded one after another, and most of them agreed with Kizaru's statement. Zan Gohong's eyes looked at Kizaru with a softer look, and he nodded slightly in agreement. General Momosagi suddenly slapped the famous sword Kimpira on the conference table, making a crisp sound, which attracted all the generals to look at this one-armed female general who still retained her charm. Originally, there were many people who secretly speculated that Momosagi Gion's position as general was valuable, but after the Battle of Impel Down a few days ago, no one dared to have such childish thoughts. In an instant, Momosagi's status was raised to a position equal to that of the veteran General Kizaru. The one-armed Momosagi didn't have any decadence, and his almond-shaped eyes sparkled, but his temper was much more irritable than before. There was less charm and more murderous aura in his eyes. Momosagi looked around at everyone. If we can win the war by threatening a little girl, then I, Gion, will quit Marine from today. Everyone looked shocked, never expecting that General Momosagi would say such decisive words. Cha Dojiju looked hesitant. He wanted to say something but was glared at by Momosagi, and he suppressed it again. Sengoku looked deeply at Momosagi. Others didn't know the reason, but he knew it best. The tallest one among them wore a red mask and his hair looked like a blooming flower. Garp rubbed Tuanzi's disheveled hair and nodded slightly. Doflamingo didn't care and sneered, "You are dead too. Get away." The three of them appeared quietly, like ghosts, and even the hot air in the office seemed a bit colder. 5 elders, world government, haha, when did you get to the point where you don't have any shame? Garp looked down at Tuanzi. Tuanzi's face was covered with bruises and redness, and there was still blood on the corners of his mouth. He raised his hand and gently rubbed Tuanzi's head. He wanted to say a lot, but he just opened his mouth and couldn't say a word. Come out. Garp stopped unconsciously, and the hand holding Tuanzi kept shaking. Since the people from CP0 came in person, it would definitely not be fake. But I can't even protect my own relatives. Without warning, 3 tall men in white appeared at the door of the conference room, blocking Garp's way. Even if I couldn't protect Ace, now I can't even protect Dango? Advertisement, as long as you were happy. Tuanzi, who was covered in blood, raised his little face spontaneously, and suddenly he smiled widely and burst into tears. Not to mention, sitting next to him was Garp, a hero who would kill people at any time. After the 2 generals and Fleet Admiral Sengoku made their stance clear, others could only keep it deep in their hearts even if they had other opinions. Garp has always hated these CP0 espionage members the most. These people are completely lackeys of the Draco. They claim to be the strongest shield of the Draco. Others are afraid of these ghosts. He doesn't take them seriously at all and reprimands angrily. Tuanzi continued to ask, "Old man, do you think Master will really give up Master Ace for me?" Tuanzi looked up at the frowning Master Garp and asked softly, "Old man, Are they going to use me to threaten Master? Back then, Sigrid and Guillaume were like sisters and were inseparable. Even if Sigrid later got married, the two of them would often sleep in the same bed. Garp nodded and said in a deep voice, "Your master is now the 5th Emperor, so powerful that he has to be feared by the world government." Garp snorted coldly, stood up and took Tuanzi's hand and walked out. Tuanzi stared at Doflamingo with sinister eyes. "You're dead." All three of them were wearing white suits and masks, so their true appearance could not be seen clearly. As long as the Black Justice pirates do not participate in the battle tomorrow, Dango will be exempted from the death penalty. Without saying anything, Warring States immediately dialed the dedicated phone number for Holy Land Maria. Why did I choose to be a Marine in the first place? Doflamingo raised his hands high. For him, it didn't matter whether Marine could win the war. On the contrary, it might be more beneficial to him if Marine lost. He smiled and said. Warring States was suddenly startled and asked, "Did the 5 elders say it themselves?" Then the smallest man among the three said softly, "The 5 elders have ordered that this little girl save Ace and commit a capital crime, so she should be executed, but for the sake of Lieutenant General Garp." Now that Guillaume can say such things, it is not surprising at all in Sengoku. Protect the weak in the world. The three ghostly figures did not forcibly block Garp, but instead opened a path for Garp to take Tuanzi through. Sengoku said calmly, "Since others have no objections, it has been decided. Doflamingo and Yushichibukai will only focus on tomorrow's battle. You don't need to worry about other things." Garp ignored these three inhuman things and stepped forward. The ground beneath his feet collapsed instantly. The strong airflow made one of them quickly hold the white hat on his head. Later, Sigrid died tragically, and Guillaume would have entered the Holy Land long ago if he had not been imprisoned by Crane. The man in white at CP0 said calmly, "Of course, the Commander-in-Chief also knows about this matter. If Fleet Admiral doesn't believe it, he can confirm it with the 5 elders." Chapter 219. The war begins after Fleet Admiral Sengoku hung up the phone. He walked to Garp with a gloomy face and said coldly. "Confirmed, it was the order given by the 5 elders themselves." Garp suddenly clenched his fists, exuding an extremely domineering aura. All the glass around the office was shattered. He looked at Sengoku and asked in a deep voice. "Even if she is Sigrid's daughter, do you still insist on obeying the orders of the world government, Fleet Admiral Warring States?" By the end, the old man's voice had turned into a stern questioning, showing no trace of mercy. Warring States closed his eyes and said calmly, "This is the order of the 5 elders, and it is also the order of the world government. Garp, I have no other choice. Don't worry, if the threat is useless, I won't really kill Eileen." The man in the white hat from CP0 interjected, "Fleet Admiral, I will personally watch the execution tomorrow. It's a good thing that the Black Justice pirates have withdrawn. Otherwise, I will have to kill this little girl myself." Sengoku's eyes were suddenly filled with red blood. Thunder was furious. He took a step forward and stared at the three people in CP0. The three ghost-like people all wore masks, and their expressions could not be seen clearly. They just stood motionless, not giving in at all to the furious Warring States. The spy agent in the white hat spoke calmly and continued. "This is also an order from Lord 5 Elders. Fleet Admiral, do you want to be disloyal to the world government?" Warring States turned his head and glanced at Tuanzi with difficulty. This extremely talented little girl clearly knew what she was going to face tomorrow, but she didn't seem to be afraid at all. Not only was there no fear on her face, she even had some pride. It seems to be saying, "Look, how important I am to my master. Master will definitely quit fighting for me tomorrow." How could she be so sure? Warring States didn't want to think too much, and he didn't dare to think too much. When Sigrid died, the world government told him that it was all the female apprentice's fault. She had offended the celestial dragons and was disrespectful to them first. Out of loyalty to the world government, Warring States believed it, and he never thought about seeking revenge from those Tianlong people, because this was an order from the world government. Since he was young, he has firmly believed that the government's orders are absolute justice, so he completes the task perfectly every time. As a result, he has climbed step by step to his current position. He will not hesitate to take action against those who doubt the government, even Garp, his old partner. Advertisement. He has absolute loyalty to the world government. He has firmly believed in one thing since he was a child. Obeying orders is a Marine's duty, and those who disobey government orders are not Marines. Since Sigrid's death, although he still insisted on this belief, doubts had ignited in his heart. Is the world government's order really correct? Although Tuanzi is guilty first, is it really necessary to go to this extent? A world government that seeks the welfare of the people of the world, is open-minded and magnanimous, is the justice in his heart. Seeing Tuanzi's calm expression, not even asking for help from Fleet Admiral, who was his master, Sang Guo felt empty in his heart, feeling that something important was suddenly missing. For a moment, I felt that all my persistence for so many years was meaningless. Fetching water from a bamboo basket leaves nothing behind in the end. Tuanzi looked up at Warring States and said calmly, "You didn't avenge my mother back then, and I don't expect you to be merciful to me now." Then Tuanzi took off the 3 swords from his waist and handed them to Garp with both hands. "Ace has been captured for so long and you didn't save Ace, so I don't dare to expect you to really save me, old man. The only thing I want to ask you is to give these 3 swords to my master. I think this should not be difficult for you. In addition, I want to tell my master something. He promised me before that as long as I kill the celestial dragon to avenge my parents, he will change the name of this dragon-slaying sword. It seems that there is no chance. You can tell my master next time I kill the celestial dragon. Just use this knife. I sharpen it every day to make it sharper. Garp gently took Tuanzi's 3 swords and said in a deep voice. You have to have confidence in your master. He can do anything for you. Even if he doesn't participate in the war, there are white beards, red hair, and so many others. With the Revolutionary Army, you may not die, and Ace may not die either. Tuanzi laughed and said proudly. Of course I have confidence in the master. Old man, when you say this, which side are you on? Or Marine? You don't want the white cloak on your back anymore, do you? The process of Tuanzi's capture was very simple. He did not make any resistance and took the initiative to hand over his sword. The ability of the Phantom Beast Devil Fruit was not used at all. The 2 people who want to capture her are Fleet Admiral Sengoku, who should be called Master, and the other, Master Garp, who has been called Master for 3 months. She didn't want to resist. At this moment, she just wanted to see her master on the battlefield tomorrow. That was enough. Advertisement next, the meeting was interrupted. As Sengoku and Garp left one after another, Kizaru was the first to stand up and say goodbye to the meeting, and then left quickly, leaving only the marine backbones in the conference room looking at each other. Momoshagi Gion slashed the conference table with his sword and walked away. A town somewhere in South Blue. The sky was covered with dark clouds and it was raining lightly. The people in the city are discussing the upcoming war. It was the first time that they had heard of the scale of this war. A middle-aged man selling vegetables held an umbrella while selecting fresh vegetables and worried. Do you think the Black Justice Pirates, the Whitebeard Pirates, and the Red Pirates, all these emperors will really go? Who knows, the red hair may come. After all, he has already made the announcement. Naturally, the lawless guys from the Black Justice Pirates will not be absent, but Whitebeard is already very old after all, and I heard that his health it doesn't seem to be very good. It's hard to say whether I can come. Another person interjected. It will come. After all, Whitebeard is a survivor before the Great Pirate Era. He is a legendary pirate. An old lady wearing glasses opposite looked down at the newspaper and said disdainfully. What are you guys thinking? Do you know how dangerous Marine's situation is now? Not only did they lose 2 generals, but they have now summoned almost all the elite troops from all over the world to prepare for it. If Whitebeard hadn't come, could they have taken it so seriously? The East China Sea, a vast grassland. Several shepherds held newspapers in their hands and argued with each other. A middle-aged man wearing a white cloth said, the Black Justice Pirates and Whitebeard really dared to attack Marine headquarters. How could Marine headquarters lose? Another woman echoed. Yes, no matter how powerful the pirates are, it is impossible to invade Marineland. It is the holy land of justice. The bald old man puffing away at the side chuckled. It's too early to say this. You are young and don't know that a pirate named Golden Lion Shiki invaded Marineland more than 20 years ago. One person almost destroyed half of the Marine headquarters. This time, the 3 sea emperors led by the Black Justice Pirates joined forces to attack, plus the powerful Revolutionary Army took action. After today, it is still unknown whether Malinfondo will exist. People all over the world are looking forward to this war. Whether the flag of justice can continue to fly over the world depends on today's battle. Chapter 220 Marines move Sabo the Islands. The place is still in a mess, and many ruins have not yet had time to be repaired. But no one continued to work today. The survivors were all staring at the big screen in the square, watching the real-time progress of Ace's public execution. In order to demonstrate its strength and deter other pirates, the Marine headquarters specially ordered that this execution be seen by people all over the world. Hundreds of well-known reporters and photographers came from all over the world in order to obtain the real material of this war as soon as possible. Now the whole world is paying attention to this war, and any piece of news is priceless. Through the 3 huge projection screens, everyone can clearly see that all the elite Marine headquarters are arrayed on the coastline, ready. In the middle of the Marine generals, there was a makeshift steel execution platform, with a man and a woman kneeling on the platform. Behind the 2 men, there were 2 Marine executioners standing with swords in their hands, waiting for the time to come and execute them immediately. At the front of the crowd, a middle-aged reporter wearing a peaked cap said in surprise, I recognize who Fire Fist Ace is, but who is that little girl on the side? Do any of you know? For a moment, everyone shook their heads and hurriedly recorded the unexpected news, sent it to newspapers around the world, and printed it out immediately. On the coastline of Marineland, 100 pacifists stood in the front row, forming a line. Even the Marine generals felt terrified when they looked at the hundreds of pacifists. If these pacifists attacked at the same time, the entire Marineland would probably be sunk. Behind the pacifist front, the 7 warlords of the Sea Moonlight Moria, Don Quixote Doflamingo, and Jorkal Mahawk stood proudly in front of them. They were not afraid of this war, but rather a little afraid of it, excited. Behind them, giant generals stood as tall as 8 hills, glaring eagerly and angrily at the front. Behind the giant general, thousands of Marine soldiers surrounded the execution platform like a tidal wave, and the water was tight. Looking down from the execution platform, all we can see is a vast expanse of white below, all filled with high-spirited Marines. Advertisement on the city wall high on the coastline, a heavy steel cannon was set up every 10 meters apart. Each cannon was piled with enough shells. The Marine gunners looked serious and looked at death as if they were dead. Along the way, Sengoku looked at the huge crowd of Marines and remained silent. He slowly came to the execution platform, stood behind Ace and Tuanzi, and ordered softly. When the last familiar figure walked out, all the Marines were excited. It turned out to be General Aokiji, who had disappeared for a long time. Give me the phone bug. Immediately afterwards, General Momoshagi, who had only one arm left, came over expressionlessly and sat down slowly. General Kizaru was the first to walk out slowly, sitting casually on the yellow throne with his legs crossed. Garp punched the table. Sengoku's desk instantly shattered and sawdust flew into the air. If the two of us mess up, this battle will be impossible, and we have a heavy responsibility. Sengoku took the phone bug with one hand, walked slowly to the front of the execution platform, looked down at everyone, and his calm voice could be heard clearly by the amplified phone bug throughout Marineland. Warring States period, Tuanzi is Sigrid's daughter, can you really bear it? If Irene had not committed the crime of saving Ace, I would have protected her even if I risked my life. But Garp, so many people saw it that day, and it was Irene who was at fault first. The appearance of Aokiji undoubtedly gives the Marine soldiers more peace of mind. Every Marine general is the highest combat power of the Marine Corps. One more Marine general will increase the chance of victory. Garp paused, took a long breath, and slammed the door. Whether you win or not will have extremely important significance for the future direction of the world. I don't need to tell you Ace's true identity. The Kizaru monster smiled and glanced in Aokiji's direction, and said softly, I didn't expect that you actually showed up. Ace was furious and retorted, no, my dad only has Whitebeard. Garp turned around and left with a cold face, no longer talking nonsense to Warring States. Aokiji sat down calmly and said calmly, justice still needs me for the time being. Advertisement: this war only involves the combined number of ordinary Marines, which totals 100,000, and they are all elite Marines summoned from all over the world. Suddenly, there was a commotion in Marine below the execution platform, and everyone felt an extremely powerful sense of oppression. With an angry look on his face, Garp asked sternly, is this really necessary? Threatening a little girl's life? I can't accept it. But what made them a little curious was that there were 4 chairs placed under the execution platform, apart from the 3 generals, who owned the other chair. There used to be a large number of ordinary people living here, and most of them were Marines' relatives. Kizaru, who was leaning comfortably on the chair, chuckled and was non-committal. Warring States looked up at the 5 big characters hanging on the wall, absolute justice, and sighed, following Garp out of the highest office. Thinking of this, some people already miss Akainu in their hearts. If he can come to participate in this war, the chance of winning will be greater, right? The General T. Dolphin behind her followed closely behind. Sengoku stood up and continued, Garp, you are the hero of Marine and the faith of millions of Marines. First a Marine Fleet Admiral and the top general of Marine. The executioner on the side immediately agreed and respectfully handed over the loudspeaker phone that had been prepared long ago. But now they have all been moved to other places in advance, away from this war, because no one knows whether the Marine headquarters will still exist after this earth-shattering battle, and whether Marine Fando will still exist. There is something I want to convey to you first. The death of this man Portgas Diaz here today is of great significance because his father is One Piece Gold D. Roger. Even the world government has personally ordered that this matter is no longer something you and I can decide. This public execution must not fail. Fleet Admiral Sengoku sat motionless on the office chair and said calmly, originally, I wanted to let Eren leave, but when I thought about being captured by that B***** D. Doflamingo, I couldn't do anything about it. There was a lot of excitement in front of Malinfondo, but the town behind was unusually quiet, even a little depressed, and not a single person could be seen. The top floor of the Marine headquarters building. In addition, there are 50 large Marine battleships surrounding Marine Fando, using a surrounding formation to protect Marine Fando. If the Black Justice pirates really come, they must first defeat them.